Chapter 3679. Back then, Zhuowen had learned about the ancient star system from Ma Yujie, although it was only fragmentary information. However, he could still recognize at a glance that the mysterious star suspended above the primordial tree was the ancient star system that Ma Yujie had mentioned. Speaking of which, Ma Yujie seemed to have come from the ancient star system. However, Zhuowen knew too little about the ancient star system, so he didn't know how extraordinary it was to come from the ancient star system. Eh? You actually know about the ancient star system? Duan Jipeng looked at Zhuowen in surprise. Zhuowen rubbed his nose and said, I've heard of the primeval star system from a cultivator, but this is the first time I've seen the true primeval star system. Duan Jipeng's interest was piqued and he said, There's actually someone in the lower realm who knows about the ancient star system? Could that person be a descender from the outer realm? Zhuowen shook his head and said, He didn't come from the outer realm, but from the ancient star system. Duan Jipeng was stunned and immediately said with a serious expression, Fellow Taoist Zhuo, are you joking? Zhuowen was startled. He could see that Duan Jipeng's expression was a little strange. Fellow Taoist Duan, is there a problem? Back then, that cultivator told me personally. Zhuowen thought of Ma Yujie's chubby figure. Speaking of which, Ma Yujie had always been extremely mysterious. Even now, he couldn't see through that guy's real situation. Moreover, ever since the invasion of the foreign race, Zhuowen had seen Ma Yujie in the Door of Darkness, and there had been no news of Ma Yujie in all these years. Later, when Zhuowen's strength reached the peak of this starry sky, he had actually asked Tai Ching, Demon Saint, and other almighty figures to look for Ma Yujie, but there was no news. Zhuowen knew that Ma Yujie had most likely left the starry sky. He should be bragging. It can't be true. Duan Jipeng laughed and said indifferently, Fellow Taoist Duan, why are you so sure? Zhuowen asked doubtfully. That's because the existences in the ancient star system are all supreme rulers, supreme experts. He's a true overlord who can stand shoulder to shoulder with this starry sky. This kind of overlord is extremely mysterious. They only live in the ancient star system and rarely leave. I remember that in the oldest records of the outer realms, there was an ancient overlord who came from the immemorial star system to the outer realms. The 100 regions are shaken, and all creatures are paying homage. No one dares to go against the archaic giant. There is only reverence in their hearts, Duan Jipeng said seriously. Zhuowen opened his mouth slightly, feeling incredulous. He knew how strong the 100 domains were, but the 100 domains were all worshipping a mere magnate from the immemorial star galaxy. Wasn't this a little too exaggerated? I can tell you clearly that when the overlord from the ancient star system came to the 100 domains, the laws of the 100 domains became chaotic and disasters continued. That was because the overlord from the ancient star system was too terrifying. Just by standing in the 100 domains, the 100 domains couldn't withstand the aura of the overlord from the ancient star system. If the cultivator you're talking about really came from the ancient star system, your starry sky would have collapsed long ago. Duan Jipeng shook his head. He didn't believe that the cultivator from the ancient star system that Zhuowen was talking about was real. I see, I understand. Zhuowen nodded, but he couldn't help but think of Ma Yujie's serious expression when he talked about his origin. He could feel that Ma Yujie wasn't lying or joking at that time. However, according to Duan Jipeng, Ma Yujie couldn't be a overlord from the ancient star system. After all, Ma Yujie was too weak. It seems that this guy's true origin really needs to be explained by him. Zhuowen shook his head. He didn't think too much about Ma Yujie. In his opinion, no matter how mysterious Ma Yujie's origin was, it didn't have much to do with him. His goal was to become stronger and firmly control his own fate in his own hands. Now, let me tell you about the astral soldier. The so-called astral soldier is a divine weapon or a fragment of a divine weapon that fell from the ancient star system. The astral soldier is a powerful divine weapon that surpasses the heaven breaker grade divine weapons. Even if it's just a fragment of an astral soldier, its power is comparable to a top heaven breaker grade divine weapon. In the 100 outer domains, the experts who truly stand at the peak actually have one or more complete sets of astral soldiers. When Duan Jipeng mentioned the astral soldier, his eyes were filled with sorrow. It was obvious that he was thinking of Yun Fei, who sacrificed herself for him. Zhuowen glanced at Duan Jipeng. He wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, he didn't say anything. Duan Jipeng understood Zhuowen's intention. He stretched out his right hand. In the center of his palm, there was a complicated pattern that looked like a black eye that was looking at Zhuowen. This is the dark chakra eye, the astral soldier that Yun Fei gave to me. It has all kinds of mysterious powers. Perhaps you are wondering why I didn't use the astral soldier when I was fighting with Venerable Hongrui, Duan Jipeng said self-deprecatingly. Yes, you said it yourself. The astral soldier is very powerful. If you had used the astral soldier, you would have easily defeated Venerable Hongrui, Zhuowen said calmly. Sigh. The astral soldier is indeed very powerful. However, the price to use it is also very high. It requires a huge amount of blood sacrifice to activate the astral soldier. It requires the blood sacrifice of millions of living beings. Only after feeding the astral soldier will the astral soldier be able to unleash its power. I really can't do something like blood sacrifice, and I don't want to do it either. The only way I can activate the astral soldier is by sacrificing my blood essence. However, the consequence of doing so is that not only is the astral soldier's power ordinary, but I will also die because of the blood sacrifice. I will only use this move when my life is in danger. When Duan Jipeng said this, the corners of his mouth were full of bitterness. Zhuowen sucked in a breath of cold air. This astral weapon was so strange that it actually required a blood sacrifice to activate it. Moreover, it required such a large amount. Daoist Duan, according to what you said, won't the experts in the 100 domains who have obtained the astral soldier kill the weak wantonly and sacrifice their blood to the astral soldier? Zhuowen said with a frown. Duan Jipeng nodded and said, Indeed, such things happen. However, they are very rare. When those experts perform a blood sacrifice, they usually start a war between realms. There are 108 realms in the 100 outer realms. Every time there is a realm war, there will be hundreds of millions of lives lost. Those powerhouses usually use the lives of the dead to achieve their goal of blood sacrifice. Hearing this, Zhuowen frowned slightly. It seemed that the 100 domains in the 100 domains were even more dangerous than the lower realm. The killings there were even more terrifying and cruel. In order to nurture a divine weapon, they could start a war between domains where millions of living beings would die. After Zhuowen and Duan Jipeng talked about the astral soldier, they couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Chapter 3680. After a round of conversation, Zhuowen benefited greatly. The doubts he had about cultivation in the past were all resolved. Moreover, Zhuowen's future cultivation direction became clearer. Apart from that, Zhuowen also learned about the specific divisions of the heaven-breaking tier from Duan Jipeng. The heaven-breaking 9 transformations were the Divine Fetus Transformation, Spirit Transformation, Heaven-Trampling Transformation, Void God Transformation, 5 Elements Transformation, Yin-Yang Transformation, God Realm Transformation, Celestial Demon Transformation, and Ancient Star Transformation. Among them, the Divine Fetus Transformation was a transformation of the physical body. It would become extremely tough and strong, and could adapt to the harsh environment of the chaotic galaxy. This was also why only heaven-breaking tier cultivators were qualified to enter the chaotic galaxy. Cultivators below the heaven-breaking tier would die without a doubt. However, Zhuowen was a freak. After all, he had cultivated the shattered divine power in advance, and his physical body was also tempered by the shattered divine power. It was not inferior to the physical body of a divine fetus transformation cultivator. That was why Zhuo was able to come and go freely in the chaotic starry sky without being affected. It was said that the spirit transformation was a transformation of the divine sense, and the heaven-trampling transformation allowed one to step on the sky in the 100 domains outer realm. Zhuo learned from Duan Jipeng that the energy level of the 100 domains outer realm was much higher than that of the lower realm. Therefore, all matter and even gravity were extremely strong. It was far from what the lower realm could compare to. Cultivators before the heaven-trampling transformation couldn't fly at all. They could only run on the ground like mortals. Duan Jipeng's God Realm transformation would condense his own God Realm. Regardless of whether it was attacking or defending, God Realm was extremely convenient and powerful. After the God Realm transformation, the main characteristic of the celestial demon transformation was that one could transform into a celestial demon body. One's strength would increase by hundreds or thousands, and it was extremely explosive. Supremacy Hong Rui was a celestial demon transformation cultivator. The celestial demon he transformed into was extremely difficult and powerful to deal with. If Zhuo hadn't used the right strategy, he and Duan Jipeng would have died. After Duan Jipeng recovered slightly, he slowly stood up and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Zhuo, I'll never forget your life-saving grace. I don't have anything good on me. Take this halberd." Zhuo took the halberd. His eyes instantly became serious. He could feel the terrifying aura contained within the halberd. The halberd's aura even surpassed the snake's shadow divine staff that he had just obtained. Without a doubt, this halberd was a divine artifact that surpassed Heaven Breaker rank 3. This is the Moon Shaman weighted halberd. It's a level 4 heaven-crushing divine weapon. I hope you don't mind, Duan Jipeng said with a smile. Meanwhile, Zhuo was seeing stars. Duan Jipeng was really worthy of being an elite at the God Domain Transformation realm. He had casually gifted him a level 4 heaven-crushing God tool. This was really a valuable gift. Although Zhuo wanted to decline, he couldn't resist Duan Jipeng's enthusiasm and could only accept it in the end. After Duan Jipeng saw that Zhuo had accepted the Moon Shaman weighted halberd, he asked solemnly, "Taoist Zhuo, did you teleport Venerable Hong Rui to your lower realm Starry Sky and make use of the Starry Sky's law to kill him?" Zhuo was stunned for a moment before he nodded. "Then you're in trouble," Duan Jipeng said seriously. "What do you mean?" Zhuo asked solemnly. Venerable Hong Rui was a venerable of the Nuwa clan. He was considered one of the higher-ups in the Nuwa clan. Such a person would definitely leave a trace of his aura in the clan's ancestral hall. As long as Venerable Hong Rui dies, the Nuwa clan's Grand Venerable will be able to use that trace of his aura to search for the place where Venerable Hong Rui died. Venerable Hong Rui died in your Starry Sky. If the Nuwa clan's Grand Venerable finds out, I don't think I need to tell you what will happen to your Starry Sky. Duan Jipeng sighed softly. Zhuowen's expression changed slightly. He didn't expect the Nuwa clan's Grand Venerable to have such a trick up his sleeve. Venerable Hong Rui died in the Starry Sky. If the Grand Venerable really came to find him, he would definitely find the Starry Sky. When that time came, it would be really troublesome. No matter how strong the Grand Venerable is, he shouldn't be able to resist the suppression of the Starry Sky's law, right? As long as the living beings in the Starry Sky don't come out, the Grand Venerable won't be able to do anything to us, Zhuo said solemnly. Duan Jipeng shook his head and smiled bitterly. Fellow Taoist Zhuo, your thinking is too simple. The Grand Venerable is an existence that surpasses the heaven-crushing realm. With his strength, he can destroy any Starry Sky in the Starry Sky. However, the price to pay for destroying a Starry Sky in the Starry Sky is extremely high. Existences like him rarely do such things. However, if he really finds out that Venerable Hong Rui died in your starry sky, the Grand Venerable will really destroy the starry sky. Zhuowen was stunned. His expression became extremely ugly. According to Duan Jipeng, wouldn't the Nuwa clan be doomed? Fellow Taoist Duan, is there no other way to conceal Venerable Hong Rui's aura? Zhuowen asked anxiously. Duan Jipeng's eyes flashed. He gritted his teeth and said, I do have a way. The dark chakra I hidden in my body can conceal Venerable Hong Rui's aura. However, a blood sacrifice is required to activate the dark chakra I. If I use my own blood sacrifice, I'll die for sure. Unless someone shares the sacrifice with me, I'll be able to avoid death, but my vitality will be greatly damaged. Zhuowen agreed without any hesitation. He expressed his willingness to share the blood sacrifice with Duan Jipeng. After the two of them reached an agreement, Duan Jipeng extended his right hand. The symbol on his palm started to squirm and wriggle. In the end, it left his palm and hovered in front of him. This was the image of an eye formed by complex veined patterns. However, this image was incomplete. Zhuowen could sense a very strange and unusual aura from this eye. This aura was something he had never experienced before. He knew that this was the power of a star weapon. Duan Jipeng bit his thumb and aimed the wound at the dark chakra eye. The dark chakra eye pounced toward Duan Jipeng like a cat that had smelled blood. It started to furiously absorb Duan Jipeng's blood essence. Soon, Duan Jipeng's face became extremely pale, and his body started to tremble. When Duan Jipeng was about to reach his limit, he quickly sealed the dark chakra eye and stopped the bleeding. Fellow Taoist Zhuo, all you have to do is follow my instructions. Remember, if you can't hold on, you must tell me. I'll stop the dark chakra eye in time. Duan Jipeng solemnly warned. Zhuowen nodded. He also cut his thumb and aimed the wound at the dark chakra eye. Duan Jipeng also released the seal on the dark chakra eye. The dark chakra eye once again pounced on Zhuowen. Zhuowen could feel that his blood essence was quickly being sucked away by the dark chakra eye. Soon, Zhuowen felt dizzy. His face was pale. This is a sign of excessive blood loss. But the dark chakra eye didn't stop. Instead, the speed of absorption became even faster. It's as if it wants to suck Zhuowen dry. Duan Jipeng found that Zhuowen couldn't hold on any longer. He quickly sealed the dark chakra eye again. Plop! Zhuowen's legs were weak, and he almost fell to the ground. He gasped for breath. His eyes were full of fear. Is this enough? Zhuowen looked at Duan Jipeng. It should be enough. But with the current power of the dark chakra eye, it won't be able to cover the aura of Venerable Hong Rui, who has already entered the Fiend God transformation state for a long time. I think it can cover for about 10,000 years at most. Chapter 3681. Zhuowen's expression was somewhat gloomy. There were more than 100 billion living beings roaming the universe. It was truly too many. Unless he invaded other galaxies like Golden Corner Starry Sky and took over other galaxies, he might be able to properly arrange all the living beings in the universe. But he obviously wouldn't do something like invading another's territory for no reason. And the space of his great world was limited. It simply couldn't accommodate all the living beings in the universe. Fellow Taoist Duan, what's the specific cultivation level of that Nuwa clan's Grand Sovereign? Zhuowen asked with a gloomy face. Duan Jipeng was startled, but he didn't think too much about it. He said, I don't know about the Grand Sovereign's specific cultivation level. In any case, it's beyond heaven crushing. The realm above heaven crushing is the great carefree realm. At this realm, one can be free and unfettered. They can freely roam the chaotic universe, and their strength is even more terrifying. Such existences are the pinnacle of powerhouses in the 100 domains. They're supreme existences that can dominate a region and all living beings. At this point, Duan Jipeng's eyes revealed yearning and reverence. Good. If I can reach the great carefree realm within 10,000 years, even if that grand sovereign really finds out about the universe, he probably won't dare to go too far. Zhuowen said. Duan Jipeng nodded and said, powerhouses of the great carefree realm are all peerless figures. Under normal circumstances, they won't casually get into conflict. If you really reach the great carefree realm, the grand sovereign won't act recklessly. What? What did you say? You want to reach the great carefree realm in 10,000 years? Duan Jipeng thought of something and suddenly turned his head to look at Zhuowen in shock. He repeated his question. I said if I reach the great carefree realm in 10,000 years, then I'll be able to protect the universe. Zhuowen said seriously. Duan Jipeng face-bombed and said somewhat speechlessly, fellow Taoist Zhuo, I think you'd better give up on this idea. It's basically impossible to reach the great carefree realm in 10,000 years without breaking the heavens. In the 100 domains, 10,000 years is as short as a snap of a finger. You're already a genius if you can reach the heaven-crushing fifth transformation in such a short time, but to reach the great carefree realm, then, at this point, Duan Jipeng shook his head. His meaning was very clear. He felt that Zhuowen was just talking nonsense. Zhuowen smiled but didn't say anything. In fact, only he himself knew that after his soul merged with the primordial stone, his comprehension ability was absolutely unimaginably powerful. One had to know that he had cultivated from the first to the fifth blight in less than 50 years. If he were to enter the 100 domains, he would be able to sense even more powerful energies and laws. In that case, his cultivation speed would only be faster than roaming the starry skies. He was confident in himself. Of course, if he couldn't reach the great carefree realm in 10,000 years, he would try his best to bring the creatures roaming the starry sky into the big world. Fellow Taoist Duan, do you have any treasures that can suppress your cultivation base? If you do, then come with me to travel the starry sky as a guest. Let me do my part as a host, Zhuowen said with a smile. Duan Jipeng shook his head and said apologetically, fellow Taoist Zhuo, I'm sorry. I don't have any treasures that can suppress my cultivation base, and my cultivation base is too high. It's even more difficult to suppress my cultivation base, so I won't be going as a guest. With fellow Taoist Zhuo's aptitude, you should be able to come to the 100 domains soon. If fate allows it, let's meet in the 100 domains. With that, Duan Jipeng took out a divine ship from his spirit ring and jumped onto the deck. He waved at Zhuowen and drove the divine ship away. Zhuowen silently watched Duan Jipeng's figure disappear completely before returning to the starry sky. His face was extremely pale, and his aura was extremely weak. The dark chakra I had absorbed almost 60% of his essence blood, which made his body feel like it was emptied. He was extremely weak. He had to go back and recuperate for a while. Zhuowen cultivated in the Ryuka Valley for 10 years before barely recovering. During these 10 years, Zhuowen basically stayed in the Ryuka Valley with his family. Occasionally, he would guide Zhuojunan's cultivation. At the same time, Zhuowen had gathered many top craftsmen in the starry sky. He wanted to gather these craftsmen to melt down all the heaven-breaking divine artifacts he had on him and reforge them into a divine spear. He knew that the 100 domains were full of danger. He had several heaven-breaking divine artifacts on him. Other than taking out one to suppress the Ryuka Valley, the rest were not very useful to him. So, he planned to melt down all the divine artifacts and reforge them into a divine spear. It had to be said that the heaven-breaking divine artifacts were indeed too strong. Zhuowen used the green lotus fire of his divine soul sword intent to burn them for 10 years before he could barely melt them down. After the divine artifacts were melted down, the next step was for him to gather the divine craftsmen to forge the shape of the divine spear. In the courtyard of the Nether Realm, a tall young man who looked somewhat similar to Zhuowen was practicing a fist technique. The wind from his fists whistled like dragons and tigers, and its power was unparalleled. Not far away from the young man, Zhuowen and Mu Qinxue stood side by side, silently watching the young man practice his fist technique. After a set of fist techniques, the young man hurriedly came in front of Zhuowen and Mu Qinxue and asked hopefully, "Father, how is my cultivation of the Heaven Path fist technique?" This young man was in his early 20s, and there was still a hint of childishness on his face. This young man was Zhuowen and Mu Qinxue's son, Zhuojunan. In the past 10 years, Zhuojunan's cultivation speed was extremely fast. 10 years ago, he was only at the peak of the true immortal realm. But now, he had cultivated to the Void Sky 8-step. This kind of cultivation speed made even Zhuowen blush with shame. Very good. You've already cultivated the Heaven Path fist technique to greater mastery. If you use the Heaven Path fist technique, even the Life Enlightenment Realm cultivators in the Void Sky 9 steps might not be your match, Zhuowen said with satisfaction. Hearing this, Zhuojun beamed with joy. Mu Qinxue also couldn't help but smile. Suddenly, a servant came in from outside the courtyard. "Lord Zhuo, there's news from the Divine Cauldron that the forging of the spear has been completed. Now, all that's left is for you to use the divine fire to complete the final step," the servant said respectfully. Zhuowen's eyes shone brightly. The Divine Cauldron was the place where the divine blacksmiths were forging the spear. "Father, I also want to go and take a look." Zhuojunan's eyes lit up as he spoke. "All right, come with me. But after entering the Divine Cauldron, don't do anything. Just watch from the side," Zhuowen instructed. Zhuojun hurriedly nodded in agreement. Thus, Zhuowen brought Zhuojun and followed the servant out of the courtyard. The Divine Cauldron was actually a palace in the southernmost part of the valley. Beneath the palace was the hottest earth fire in the entire galaxy. In the past, Zhuowen had borrowed the power of the earth fire and combined it with the green lotus fire to melt the Heaven Breaker grade divine artifact. Especially the moon shaman weighted halberd that Duan Jipeng had given him. Because it was a Heaven Breaker grade 4 divine artifact, it had taken him a lot of effort to melt it. When Zhuowen entered the Divine Cauldron, the servant guarding it bowed to Zhuowen. Zhuowen came to the center of the Divine Cauldron. There was a huge crack there. Below the crack, there was an endless amount of red magma. Above the magma, terrifying earth fire was constantly erupting. Above the earth fire, a coarse-looking spear embryo was quietly floating in the air. Chapter 3682. When Zhuojun reached the entrance, his face was flushed red and his body was drenched in sweat. He did not take another step forward. The temperature inside the furnace was too high. Zhuojun's cultivation was the lowest here, so he could not withstand the high temperature. Zhuowen placed his right hand on Zhuojun's shoulder, and a cool energy flowed from his palm into Zhuojun's body. Zhuojun, who was still burning from the high temperature, immediately returned to normal. "Junan, you stay here for now. The earth fire here is too strong. With your cultivation, you can't withstand it," Zhuowen said in a low voice. Zhuojun nodded obediently, but his eyes were filled with admiration when he looked at Zhuowen. "Master Zhuo." Around the crack in the center of the palace, there were dozens of old men in long robes. These were the strongest blacksmiths that Zhuowen had invited. They were the strongest blacksmiths in the universe. For the past 10 years, these blacksmiths had worked tirelessly to refine the spear for him. An old man in his 70s slowly walked forward. He cupped his hands and smiled bitterly. "Master Zhuo, the spear embryo has been refined. There's only one step left. We still need the help of Master's divine fire." "No problem." Zhuowen waved his hand and pointed his sword finger at his forehead. Immediately, a soul sword intent was released. Around the soul sword intent, a terrifying green lotus flame burst out, burning continuously. From afar, the green color was glaring and intense. The soul sword intent rushed into the space above the crack and quickly circled around the spear embryo. Then, the green lotus flame was like a maggot, completely igniting the spear embryo. At the same time, Zhuowen formed a seal with his hands, and the array below the crack was activated. Then, the sea of lava in the crack surged with terrifying waves. Finally, it condensed into a fire dragon that rushed out of the crack and into the spear embryo. The green lotus flame and the fire dragon merged together, forming an even more terrifying flame that continued to roast the spear embryo. The surface of the spear embryo began to turn red, a sign that it was being melted by the high temperature. "You can start forging the spear embryo," Zhuowen said to the surrounding refiners. The craftsmen around the crack nodded. Immediately, they took out their divine hammers and controlled them with their divine thoughts. Then, they began to hit the spear embryo continuously. The sound of metal clashing resounded in the surroundings, crisp and pleasing to the ear. As the divine hammer continued to fall, the impurities on the surface of the spear embryo gradually fell off, revealing the original appearance of the divine spear. Time gradually passed, and 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. When the divine hammer knocked out the last piece of impurities, the divine spear exploded with a blazing light. At the same time, Zhuowen saw a crescent moon burning with red flames above the divine spear. This crescent moon was as bright as the moon, but also as hot as the sun. An unprecedentedly terrifying aura burst out in an instant. Then, the ground began to crack, and dense cracks appeared on the surrounding palaces. The aura of the divine spear was too terrifying. Even the palace could not withstand it. Zhuowen took a step forward, and his body was surrounded by purple intent. He ignored the terrifying flames around the divine spear and grabbed the handle of the divine spear in his hand. Sizzle! The terrifyingly high temperature caused black smoke to rise from Zhuowen's palm, which was holding the spear. Zhuowen grimaced in pain, but he was indifferent. He still held the divine spear firmly in his hand. "All of you, leave this place!" Zhuowen shouted. Everyone in the palace hurriedly ran out of the palace. Zhuojun looked at Zhuowen's miserable appearance, and could not help but shout Zhuowen's name. "Jun-un, leave this place quickly. I will take care of this. Don't worry." Zhuowen gave Zhuojun a reassuring look and urged the latter to leave quickly. Zhuojun hesitated for a moment, but finally left the palace. He also knew that he was too weak. If he went over, he would only be a hindrance. Ka! The divine spear exploded with an even more terrifying aura. The entire palace was distorted, and cracks appeared below. The magma was annihilated. Zhuowen's eyes were burning. He held the handle of the divine spear tightly and released his spiritual sword intent. He was trying to subdue the weapon spirit of the divine spear. He could see that the weapon spirit of the divine spear had just been born. It was at its weakest. If he did not completely tame it now, he would not have another chance in the future. Zhuojun and the others had not been in the palace for long when they were shocked to find that the palace had collapsed and shattered into countless pieces. Zhuowen and the divine spear rushed into the sky and engaged in a fierce battle. Zhuojun saw that Zhuowen's injuries were increasing, and he could not help but worry. Zhuowen and the divine spear fought for a full day and night. Finally, he found an opportunity. He used his spiritual sword intent to severely injure the weapon spirit. Then, he grabbed the handle of the divine spear and dripped his blood essence onto it. After dripping his blood, Zhuowen could clearly feel that he had formed a secret connection with the divine spear. The weapon spirit of the divine spear had been severely injured and could not resist. Just like that, it dripped his blood on it. At this moment, Zhuowen's body was dripping with blood. The corners of his mouth were full of blood. In order to subdue the weapon spirit of the divine spear, he had paid a considerable price. Fortunately, this weapon spirit had not matured yet. It could only unleash a small portion of the divine spear's power. Otherwise, Zhuowen really could not subdue the divine spear. He might even be destroyed. This divine spear is even stronger than the moon shaman weighted halberd. It has probably reached the level of heaven-breaking tier 4. Zhuowen felt the terrifying aura coming from the divine spear. He discovered that on the blade of the divine spear there was an image of a crescent moon. And what was strange about this crescent moon was that its surface was actually burning with raging flames. This image was exactly the same as the crescent moon that appeared in the sky when the divine spear was just born. Zhuowen held the handle of the divine spear with his right hand and suddenly waved it in the air. Instantly, a terrifying power spread out. With Zhuowen as the center, the surrounding tens of billions of miles of space gradually distorted. Zhuowen was frightened and hurriedly put away the divine spear. Only then did the distorted space return to normal. He just waved it casually and this space almost could not withstand it. It was indeed worthy of being the Earth God's spear that had fused with several divine tools. Since there is a crescent moon image burning with flames on the spear blade, then let's call it the half-moon god fire spear. Zhuowen muttered to himself and gave this newly born divine spear a rather appropriate name. When Zhuowen landed on the ground, those dozens of weapon refiners hurriedly went forward and congratulated Zhuowen for obtaining a divine tool. Zhuowen was rather happy and let them all go and receive their rewards. Those dozens of weapon refiners were even more beaming with joy. One had to know that Zhuowen invited them over and gave them an extremely attractive reward. Now that the divine spear had been refined, they could not wait to receive their rewards. They were just waiting for Zhuowen's words. "Father, you are so powerful. Such a powerful divine spear was subdued by you." Zhuojunan went forward and looked at Zhuowen with admiration. "Junan, help me back first." Chapter 3683. After half a year of recuperation, Zhuowen finally recovered from all his internal injuries. He also planned to leave the open starry sky and head to the 100 domains. Outside the Hongming Path, Ryuka and a group of people came to send Zhuowen off. In addition, the Black King, Demon Sage Dong Huangtai, Du Huacan and some other familiar people from Sanqing Street also came outside the Hongming Path. They were all here to send Zhuowen off. Of course, only these people knew about Zhuo Wenli's plan to travel the starry sky. They were all his trusted friends. We don't know what kind of place the 100 domains is, but it's much more dangerous than traveling the starry sky. If you get there, you must remember to protect yourself. Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao pulled Zhuowen and nagged at him. Both of their faces were filled with reluctance. Although they wanted Zhuowen to stay, they knew that it was unrealistic. Zhuowen had his own pursuits and path. They couldn't force him. "Father, I will definitely catch up to you. After I break through the heavens, I will step onto the Hongmeng Path to find you." Zhuojun gave Zhuowen a hug and said with a firm gaze. Zhuowen patted Zhuojun's shoulder and said with a smile, "Junan, I believe that with your talent, you will soon catch up to me." Zhuowen's gaze fell on Mu Qinshu. He didn't say anything but revealed an apologetic expression. Although his great world could fit Mu Qinshu, Zhuojunan and the rest of his family, and bring them to the 100 domains. But he knew that this wasn't suitable at all. The laws of the 100 domains were too strong. No one in his family had broken through the heavens. Even if he brought them there, they would just stay in the Great World. If he died in the 100 domains, the Great World would be destroyed. At that time, his family would also be destroyed. This was simply not worth the loss. Zhuowen's current plan was to raise his cultivation as soon as possible and then establish a foundation of his own in the 100 domains. In the future, if any Ryuka or native cultivators managed to break through the heavens and enter the 100 domains, then he would accept them as a member of his force. This was the most appropriate method at the moment. Mu Qinshu stretched out her slender, jade-like hands and carefully tidied up Zhuowen's clothes. She instructed, After reaching the 100 outer territories, you must be careful. Don't act recklessly. There's one more important thing that you must do. That is to think of me often. Do you understand? Zhuowen's gaze was gentle as he held onto Mu Qinshua's hand and said affectionately, "My wife's words are like an imperial edict, and I dare not disobey." Mu Qinshui giggled. After that, the Black King, Dong Wangtai, and the others also went up to bid farewell to Zhuowen. After exchanging some pleasantries, Zhuowen stepped onto the primordial path, waved at everyone, and rushed towards the primordial path. Not long after, Zhuowen's figure turned into a Xiao Hei dot and disappeared from everyone's sight. Uncle Demon Saint, my father said that only heaven-breaking realm cultivators have the qualifications to step onto the primordial path. If someone who hasn't broken through the heavens steps on it, they will be pressed down. Is this true? Zhuojun looked at Zhuowen's disappearing figure with great reluctance in his heart, but his gaze quickly landed on the primordial path, and he asked Demon Saint curiously. This is true. When I went up, I almost died there. If it wasn't for Master Zhuo saving me, I would have already died. Demon Saint revealed a bitter smile. Thinking back to the scene when he stepped onto the primordial path, he still had some lingering fear. Then my father's cultivation is only at the 5th heaven's blight. Why can he come and go freely on the primordial path? Why don't Uncle Demon Saint go up and give it a try? Who knows, you might be the same as my father. Zhuojun said. Demon Saint shook his head like a rattledrum. What a joke, Zhuowen wasn't here this time. If he died there, no one could save him. Your father is a freak, not what we can compare to. He can come and go freely on the primordial path, but we can't. Demon Saint admitted defeat. Everyone also nodded their heads in deep agreement, very much agreeing with Demon Saint's evaluation of Zhuowen. This guy was indeed a freak. Zhuowen rushed on the primordial path for a full few days. He soon discovered that the circling starry sky he was in had already become the size of a palm at this moment. At the same time, he also finally saw the full appearance of the primordial tree clearly. The primordial tree was an incomparably massive towering tree that grew in the chaotic starry sky. The entire primordial tree was suffused with a mysterious purple color. And on this big tree, there were no leaves, only densely packed branches like a spider web. And on these branches hung one starry sky-colored fruit after another. Zhuowen knew that these fruits were actually each and every one of the lower realm's starry skies. And the circling starry sky that Zhuowen was in was one of these fruit. Apart from this, Zhuowen also discovered that among these starry sky fruits, there were quite a few purple long rainbows that gave rise to one after another. He was very clear that these purple long rainbows were actually the primordial path of each lower realm's starry sky. The place where these purple long rainbows finally converged was extremely far ahead, on a seemingly very large continent. That continent's surface was enshrouded with all sorts of different energies. These energies were brightly colored, dazzling and resplendent. Zhuowen knew that that continent was actually his final destination this time, the 100 Outer Realms. He knew that the 100 Outer Realms looked like it was not far from him, but actually, it was much further than he imagined. Bang, bang, bang. Suddenly, the sound of intense collision came from the place where Zhuowen was. His gaze landed on the place of collision and discovered that a single-eyed behemoth had appeared there since who knows when. This behemoth was at least 10,000 feet in size and exuded a terrifying aura that made one's hair stand on end. In particular, that single eye contained some sort of purplish-gold color, and the energy contained within it was absolutely extraordinary. This single-eyed behemoth stared fixedly at Zhuowen. Zhuowen even saw that the single-eyed behemoth was actually drooling at him. Was it treating him as prey? Bang, bang, bang. The single-eyed behemoth continuously bombarded the primordial path, blasting out a series of dense energy ripples on the surface of the primordial path. There was some sort of powerful energy barrier several dozen feet around the primordial path. This energy barrier was formed by the energy of the primordial tree, and it could be said that it was the purest energy of the primordial tree. When Zhuowen first set foot on the primordial path, he had already discovered the energy barrier surrounding the primordial path. At first, he had thought that this energy barrier was superfluous, but now he knew that this energy barrier was really useful. The aura of this single-eyed behemoth that had suddenly appeared was very powerful, and it was at least a powerful being around the heaven-crushing third transformation. If this energy barrier had not resisted this single-eyed behemoth, Zhuowen would have been able to deal with it, but he would probably have been in a somewhat difficult situation. However, Zhuowen's expression quickly turned ugly. This was because the sounds of collisions around him had become even more violent. He looked up and discovered that even more single-eyed behemoths had appeared around him at some point. Chapter 3684. If Zhuowen were to face so many one-eyed behemoths alone, he would probably really be finished. Fortunately, the primordial chaos path's energy barrier was really sturdy. The continuous bombardment of hundreds of one-eyed beasts did not have any effect on the energy barrier. Zhuowen looked at the one-eyed beasts around him and fell into deep thought. It seemed that the chaotic starry sky was much more dangerous than he had imagined. He had only traveled along the primordial chaos path for a few days when he encountered these troublesome one-eyed beasts. Perhaps there were even more terrifying existences in the depths of the chaotic starry sky. Zhuowen pondered as he continued to rush toward the depths of the primordial chaos path. In the following period of time, he saw all kinds of terrifying beasts in the chaotic starry sky. He even saw some beasts with auras that were not inferior to supremacy Hongrui. He knew that these beasts were at least heaven-crushing 8 transformations. However, Zhuowen's gaze became more and more solemn. He suddenly felt that his idea of relying on himself to reach the 100 domains was really too stupid. Unless he could reach the level of Duan Jipeng and Supremacy Hongrui, he might be able to reach the 100 domains from the primordial chaos tree without getting lost. However, with his current cultivation and strength, if he wanted to rely on traversing the starry sky to reach the 100 domains, it would probably be a fool's dream. He was also glad that the primordial chaos path appeared in the starry sky in advance. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. In the following period of time, Zhuowen basically buried himself in rushing. Occasionally, when he was tired, he would directly sit cross-legged on the primordial chaos path to meditate and cultivate. However, Zhuowen discovered that he could not come into contact with the chaotic energy in the chaotic starry sky at all in the primordial chaos path. And without chaotic energy, he could not cultivate at all. He could only rely on chaotic crystals and divine medicine to recover. This made Zhuowen very vexed. He knew that his plan to cultivate on the primordial chaos path was probably going to be ruined. After an unknown amount of time, Zhuowen discovered that the 100 domains of the outer realm seemed to have begun to expand. Zhuowen's eyes lit up. He knew that he should have already started to approach the 100 domains now. It probably wouldn't be long before he could reach the 100 outer realms. Another few months passed, and the vast territory of the 100 outer realms appeared before his eyes. The 100 outer realms were simply too large. They spanned across the primal chaos of the starry sky, like a giant primordial beast that could be seen but not touched. After Zhuowen clearly saw the 100 outer realms, he felt his own insignificance. The 100 territories in the outer realm was simply too big. Even though it might not be as big as the primordial Hong tree, it was still 1/5 of the primordial Hong tree's size. We're about to reach the 100 outer realms. Zhuowen's eyes lit up and he sped up a lot. He was like the wind as he charged toward the 100 outer territories. Boom! Suddenly, a terrifying explosion resounded in the distance. The sound was so loud that when it reached Zhuowen's ears, it echoed in Zhuowen's ears. It was like a demonic sound that constantly ravaged his eardrums. It even affected his divine soul. Zhuowen's expression changed slightly, and he couldn't help but look toward the source of the sound. He was shocked to see that in the distance, a monster that was hundreds of thousands of feet tall was constantly bombarding the primordial chaos paths that connected to the 100 outer realms. This monster's appearance was very similar to an octopus. It had countless black tentacles, but at the core of these tentacles was actually an incomparably huge minotaur. What terrified Zhuowen even more was that this monster's tentacles were casually bombarding the nearby primordial chaos paths. They couldn't even withstand a single blow and were blasted into smithereens. How is this possible? Zhuowen's pupils shrank to the size of needles. Along the way, Zhuowen had encountered too many giant beasts outside the primordial chaos paths. There were even heaven-crushing 8 transformations beasts. However, these giant beasts couldn't penetrate the primordial chaos path's defenses at all. However, this terrifying giant beast that suddenly appeared easily destroyed the primordial chaos paths with a casual blow. Moreover, Zhuowen also discovered that there were actually some cultivators passing through the primordial chaos paths that were being bombarded. Obviously, most of these cultivators had just broken through the heavens and were planning to use the primordial chaos paths to head to the 100 outer realms. Unfortunately, the primordial chaos paths were destroyed. They didn't even have the chance to escape before they were swept away by the tentacles. Then, they were thrown into the Minotaur's mouth and eaten directly. What shocked Zhuowen even more was that the Minotaur was heading towards him. Along the way, the primordial chaos paths were destroyed, and none of the cultivators inside survived. Damn it! What kind of monster is this? Zhuowen's expression changed drastically. Without thinking, he immediately used his movement technique and quickly fled towards the 100 outer realms. He had to enter the 100 outer realms before this Minotaur reached his primordial chaos path. Otherwise, his fate wouldn't be much better than the other cultivators on the primordial chaos path. In his opinion, this monster could easily destroy the primordial chaos path. It was probably the existence of the great carefree realm that Duan Jipeng mentioned. In the eyes of this kind of existence, he was an ant-like existence. He didn't want to face this Minotaur head-on. The 100 outer realms is close at hand. I only need 10 breaths of time to reach the entrance. As Zhuowen was running quickly, he discovered that a door had appeared at the end of the primordial chaos path. He knew that it should be the end of the primordial chaos path, and also one of the entrances to the 100 outer realms. Zhuowen was wild with joy. His feet moved even faster. His hands held the chaos crystal and rapidly absorbed the chaos energy to replenish the rapidly depleted energy in his body. Just as Zhuowen was about to reach the entrance, a tentacle instantly fell on the end of the primordial chaos path. Crack, crack, crack. The energy shield on the surface of the primordial chaos path was covered with dense crack. In the end, it exploded with a loud bang. At this moment, Zhuowen reacted extremely quickly. With a stomp of his right foot, his body immediately retreated backward. At the same time, he released dozens of soul sword essences. They flew across the sky and blasted the black tentacle that had appeared in front of him. Bang, bang, bang! The soul sword essences only managed to stop the black tentacle for less than a breath of time before they were shattered by the tentacle with a loud bang. Zhuowen, on the other hand, simply fled in another direction. His eyes revealed a look of unwillingness. He was clearly just a little bit away from escaping into the 100 outer realms, but he was still a step slower than the monster. The moment Zhuowen fled, he saw with his own eyes that the primordial chaos path he was in was completely shattered. Then, the black tentacle caught up to Zhuowen at an extremely fast speed. Zhuowen was helpless. He could only take out the half-moon divine fire spear and hold it in front of him, hoping to block the attack. The only thing that made him happy was that the monster didn't come here personally. It only sent a tentacle. Obviously, the monster saw that Zhuowen was about to escape into the 100 Outer Realms, so it immediately mobilized its tentacle to deal with Zhuowen first. Bang bang bang! The black tentacle instantly lashed out at Zhuowen dozens of times. Zhuowen groaned and spat out a mouthful of blood. Because his body couldn't withstand the terrifying aura, it began to crack. As for the half-moon divine fire spear, it was much dimmer and no longer had its divine might. Chapter 3685. When this black tentacle was about to land on Zhuowen's body, it actually exploded. Black blood splattered and stained Zhuowen's entire body. This black blood was extremely corrosive. The instant Zhuowen came into contact with this black blood, Zhuowen could no longer bear it and screamed in agony. With Zhuowen's cultivation, normal corrosive properties could not harm him at all. However, this black tentacle monster was at a much higher level than him. Its corrosive properties were too terrifying. Not only did it corrode his physical body, but it was also constantly eating away at his divine sense. Zhuowen endured the intense pain and looked in the direction of the giant minotaur monster. He saw that the giant monster was currently blocked by a figure. From afar, this figure looked like the figure of an ordinary middle-aged man. He held a divine sword that was about 10 feet long. Endless terrifying sword intent surged from this person's body. His aura was not weaker than that of the giant monster. Most of the monster's tentacles had all exploded at this moment. This person had probably just appeared and attacked the monster with his sword. That was why most of the monster's tentacles were cut off. As for the tentacle that had attacked Zhuowen, it had suddenly exploded because it had been affected by this person's sword. The giant monster roared angrily and pounced toward that figure. Thus, one man and one beast engaged in a fierce battle in the chaotic starry sky. Terrifying ripples from the battle were like ring-shaped waves that constantly spread out in all directions. Zhuowen's consciousness became more and more blurry. His physical body was continuously corroded. Right now, he could barely withstand it. However, his divine sense was also affected. Although his divine sense was powerful, it was not to the extent of being annihilated by this corrosion. However, it had a great impact on his divine sense, causing his consciousness to begin to fall into chaos. At the same time, Zhuowen discovered that not far away, some giant beasts had already discovered him and were approaching him. They were treating him as prey. I have to hurry and enter the 100 domains. Zhuowen endured the splitting headache and forced himself to stay alert. He quickly rushed toward the entrance not far away. However, he was still too slow. A giant beast that looked like a leopard was extremely fast and blocked his path. This leopard's aura wasn't particularly powerful, and it was only around the heaven-crushing transformation stage. If Zhuowen was at his peak, he would have killed him with a single strike. But now, his condition was too bad. His mind was starting to go haywire, and his strength had dropped considerably. Scram! Zhuowen realized that more and more giant beasts had gathered behind him, and they were all eyeing him covetously, intending to ambush him. He knew that he could not delay any longer. Ignoring the extremely poor state of his spirit, he once again unleashed a spirit sword intent and slashed at the leopard. Bang bang bang! The terrifying green lotus explosion burst out, accompanied by the terrifying sword will, and the leopard was directly torn to pieces. Zhuowen also spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face was pale. He braced himself and quickly rushed into the entrance of the 100 outer territories. The moment he entered the entrance, he could clearly feel the world spinning. He was very familiar with this feeling. It was the feeling of being teleported. It was just that his mental state was too exhausted, and his divine soul was also exhausted to the point of being in a deficit. He had already fainted during the process of transmission. In the tranquil valley, purple flowers bloomed everywhere. At the end of the valley there was a small waterfall. Two figures walked over from the entrance of the valley. These two figures were respectively one old and one young. The old man carried a bamboo basket and walked slowly. In front of the old man was a young girl in the prime of her youth. "Grandpa, there really are purple god flowers in this valley, and there are so many of them. In the future, we don't have to wade through mountains and rivers to go to Violet Mountain. We can just come directly to this valley." The young girl skipped into the valley. When she saw the large expanse of purple flowers in the valley, her beautiful eyes revealed little stars, and she cheerfully walked into the sea of flowers. "It's indeed a great harvest. I didn't expect that the valley I accidentally discovered would actually have so many purple god flowers growing." The old man was also full of smiles. "Miaujin, stop playing. Pick the purple god flowers first. However, don't pick too many. We can't drain the pond to catch all the fish. In the future, we still need to come here often to pick them," the old man said to the young girl. When he discovered that the young girl did not reply, he could not help but look in her direction in puzzlement. At this moment, the young girl was standing at the front of the valley, at the small waterfall. She was in a daze, and no one knew what she was looking at. The old man called out to the young girl a few more times, but he discovered that the young girl was indifferent. The old man was surprised. He could not help but stand up and walk to the young girl's side. He wanted to say something, but when he followed the young girl's line of sight, he could not help but be stunned. He saw that on the shore below the waterfall, there was a man lying down. What made the old man frown even more was that this man's condition was too miserable. This was because this man had been corroded from head to toe by some kind of corrosive energy. His flesh and blood were all purple and black in color. 1/3 of this man's flesh and blood had been completely corroded, revealing eerie white bones. His face was also a mess, and it was impossible to recognize his original appearance. "Miaujin, this man is already dead." The old man carefully observed the corpse that was beyond recognition. He pulled Miaujin and did not plan to care about this man. The old man's thinking was very simple. It was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. This man's injuries were so serious, and he could see that there was still some residual corrosive energy in his wounds. Even he was shocked. He knew that this man was definitely not an ordinary person. In other words, the person who hunted him was definitely not an ordinary person. "Grandpa, he is clearly still alive. Why do you say that he is dead?" Miaujin broke free from the old man's hand and said with a frown, "I said that he is dead, so he is dead. Your grandpa has been a doctor for his whole life. How can I not see this?" The old man stepped forward again and wanted to pull Miaujin away, but Miaujin dodged. Miaujin hurriedly ran to the corpse. She did not mind that the corpse was dirty. She stretched out her jade-like hand and touched the man's neck. She said, "Grandpa, I was right. He still has a pulse. He is still alive. You must have seen wrongly just now." The old man sighed softly and pulled out a piercingly cold dagger from his waist. He said, "Since he is not dead, I will kill him now." Miaujin screamed and quickly blocked in front of the old man. Her beautiful eyes were filled with fear. She said, "Grandpa, what are you doing? Why do you want to kill him?" The old man pointed at the surface of the corpse that was beyond recognition. He said, "There is residual corrosive energy in the wounds on this man's body. It is absolutely not something that can be left behind by an ordinary heaven-breaking tier elite. In other words, this man should have been hunted down by a very powerful elite, and finally landed here with heavy injuries. The implications are really too great. We cannot bear the responsibility at all. If by any chance we save him and are then found by the faction behind this person, we will really be finished." Miaujin was stunned. She did not expect that the old man would actually think so much. "Grandpa, didn't you always say that a doctor has a benevolent heart? You have been a doctor for your whole life. Haven't you always followed this principle? Why are you going against your own principle at this time? Chapter 3686. The old man walked forward and lifted up the corpse that was beyond recognition. Then, he said to the young girl, "Let's place him in a hidden place in this valley first. I'll treat his wounds slowly later." "Grandpa, aren't we bringing him back?" the young girl asked in surprise. "Can't bring him back. This person's origin is unknown. We'd better be more cautious. If there's really a formidable person chasing after him, this way, he won't implicate us and we can save him," the old man said. Although the young girl was still worried, she had no choice but to accept the old man's suggestion. Very soon, the two people found a hidden cave in a remote part of the valley. They made a simple arrangement in the cave and placed this man who was beyond recognition here. After that, the old man took out bottles and jars from his body. Opening the bottle corks, he smeared the various liquids inside on the wounds on the man's body. What was strange was that after these medicinal liquids were smeared on the wounds that were deteriorating continuously stopped deteriorating. But the old man's expression became more and more solemn. These healing medicines of his were the most famous in this area. It was also his ancestral secret recipe. No matter how serious the external injuries were, as long as this healing medicine was smeared, it could basically recover rapidly. But this person's wounds merely stopped deteriorating. There was no trace of recovery at all. It could be seen that this person's external injuries were absolutely not ordinary. "Grandpa, did your medicine lose its effectiveness? Why is it not working at all?" The young girl opened her eyes wide and looked for a long time but did not see that the man's wounds improved. She asked in surprise. The old man staggered and almost fell. "What do you mean my medicine lost its effectiveness? It's clearly this person's injuries that are not ordinary." Cough cough. "Miaujin, this person's injuries are too serious. Furthermore, it's not an ordinary person's injuries. To want to completely recover his injuries, I'm afraid it will take a lot of time. Let's go back first today. Tomorrow, I'll bring some more medicine to apply on him," the old man said. Miaujin nodded. She also knew that her grandfather used the best medicine on this person and it only stopped his injuries from deteriorating. It could be seen that to want to completely recover this person's injuries, it would probably take a very long time. "Grandpa, wait a moment. I'll set up my array disc at the cave entrance. This way, it can also protect his life." Miaujin took out an array disc from her bosom and set it at the cave entrance. Suddenly, a strong array formation fluctuation appeared at the cave entrance. The old man felt that it was not worth it to waste an array disc on this person. However, looking at Miaujin's expression, he did not say anything. His granddaughter was too kind-hearted. How could she survive in this cold world where only the strong were respected with such a personality? The old man began to worry. In the future, if he was really gone, who would Miaujin rely on? Her personality was really not suitable for this world. Fortunately, Miaujin's Dao root isn't bad. Once the matters here are over, I can send her to the Ascension sect to cultivate. As long as she performs well, she should be able to survive in this cruel world in the future with the Ascension sect as her backing. The old man was filled with thoughts. "Grandpa, I'm done, let's go." After Miaujin finished setting up the array, she clapped her hands and called out to the old man. After that, the old man and the young man left the valley. Night slowly descended, and the entire valley was plunged into darkness. Inside the cave, the man whose face was completely unrecognizable slowly opened his eyes. "I didn't die." The young man's eyes were filled with joy. He wanted to get up, but he soon discovered that his entire body was in a tearing pain. This young man was actually Zhuowen. When the black tentacle exploded, the blood that splashed out was so corrosive that it almost corroded Zhuowen's flesh beyond recognition. Especially when Zhuowen saw the terrifying injuries on his body, he couldn't help but gasp. I smell medicine on my body. Did someone apply some kind of healing medicine on me? Zhuowen soon discovered that the wounds on his body had a strong smell of medicine. And it was this medicine that was preventing the continuous corrosion of his wounds from worsening. It seemed that someone had saved him. As for the injuries to his spirit, Zhuowen wasn't worried. His spirit was really too miraculous. After being corroded to a certain extent by that power, it actually directly swallowed that power. And after swallowing that power, Zhuowen discovered that his spirit had grown a little stronger. Now, he was mainly worried about the injuries on his body. Zhuowen smiled bitterly. He finally knew how terrifying a great carefree realm powerhouse was. Just their blood alone, he couldn't bear it. The gap was really too great. And he also finally understood how dangerous the chaotic starry skies were. There were actually so many terrifying giant beasts. No wonder it was extremely dangerous for heaven-breaking realm powerhouses to cross the chaotic starry skies. If they were unlucky and encountered a great carefree realm giant beast, they would really be finished. Zhuowen guessed that when Venerable Hong Rui and Duan Jipeng crossed from the 100 domains outside the realm to the primordial Hong Meng tree, they should have grasped some kind of method to avoid giant beasts, so they could safely reach the primordial Hong Meng tree. I have to recover from my injuries as soon as possible. Zhuowen's gaze was solemn. Previously, he had been in a coma, so he couldn't take the initiative to heal his injuries. But now, he was awake, so he naturally had to recover his injuries as much as possible. Thus, Zhuowen opened the great world, and took out many healing divine pills, as well as heaven-breaking divine medicines that he had obtained while wandering the starry skies. Although heaven-breaking divine medicines were very precious, how could they be compared to his life? His injuries were too serious now, and he didn't have the strength to protect himself at all. Now, the most important task was to recover from his injuries. Zhuowen's recovery ability was indeed stronger than ordinary cultivators, and he also found that this world was filled with terrifying rich energy. This was chaotic energy purer than the chaotic starry skies, and it was a high-level energy that could be directly absorbed into the body. With the help of this energy, divine pills, and divine medicines, Zhuowen's injuries were rapidly recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Zhuowen suspected that if he wasn't injured, relying on the energy here, he would probably be able to cultivate to the peak of the 5th blight overnight. Woo woo woo. Just as Zhuowen was healing, a strange sound came from outside the cave. It was sometimes far and sometimes close, like the wail of a malicious spirit in the night. This sound attracted Zhuowen's attention, and he looked outside the cave. What shocked Zhuowen was that it was pitch black outside. With his eyesight, he couldn't see what was outside. It was completely dark. In the cave, the only light came from the disk array that was placed not far from him. The range of the light source of the disk array wasn't large, and it just happened to cover Zhuowen's body in the light source. However, when Zhuowen used his divine sense to investigate the area, his heart sank. His divine sense had only stopped at the area of light. As for the surrounding darkness, his divine sense was completely repelled. It was as if there was a huge force in the darkness that prevented his divine sense from exploring. Chapter 3687. Zhuowen's gaze became more and more solemn. The surrounding darkness was really too strange. Even with his divine sense, he couldn't penetrate the darkness to see what was inside. Kaki. Suddenly, Zhuowen heard a soft chuckle from the darkness beside him. The laughter was very sharp and full of strangeness, making one's hair stand on end. Zhuowen frowned slightly, and his face was very gloomy. His injuries were too serious now, and it was difficult for him to move. If this unknown thing attacked him now, he would probably be finished immediately. However, what made Zhuowen feel relieved was that although the thing in the darkness was very close to him, and he could even feel that it was moving not far from him, it didn't attack him. However, that thing did not attack him. Instead, it seemed to be afraid of something. Zhuowen looked at the disc array next to him. The disc array was emitting a weak light, and the place where he was lying happened to be within the range of the light source. Could it be that the thing in the darkness can't see the light, so it doesn't dare to attack me when I'm within the range of the light? Zhuowen thought to himself. Thinking of this, Zhuowen moved closer to the disc array. He immediately heard the screams in the darkness become somewhat anxious. As expected, Zhuowen's eyes lit up. After he moved closer to the disc array, he lay there peacefully. Although his ears were still filled with the ear-piercing screams, he didn't feel much. At the same time, Zhuowen also looked at the disc array with some confusion. He could see that the large array constructed by the disc array was only half a step into the heaven breaker level. In Zhuowen's opinion, this large array was really a little shabby. Moreover, the disc array itself was very ordinary, but the weak light emitted from the disc array's surface was very magical. It could actually dispel the strange thing in the darkness. I wonder if the disc array on my body can also emit this kind of light? In order to confirm his guess, Zhuowen slowly took out the disc array from the great world, and then threw it into the darkness deep in the cave. Bang! 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 All of a sudden, intense ripping sounds came from the darkness. Zhuowen discovered that the imprint he had placed on the array disc had been torn apart. In other words, his disc array was torn apart in that instant. However, the light source that he was looking forward to was nowhere to be seen. Zhuowen's gaze turned serious. He knew that the array disc on him did not have such a function. In other words, the disc array that his savior gave him should be made of some special material, which was why it emitted such a magical light. At the same time, Zhuowen was also curious about the things in the darkness. What exactly was there in that pitch-black darkness? Although there were many doubts in his heart, Zhuowen knew that his most important task now was to quickly recover from his injuries. Thus, Zhuowen forced himself to sit up cross-legged. After cultivating the primordial chant, Zhuowen's physique became even stronger, so his recovery ability was also extremely strong. In addition, this place was the 100 territories outside the realm. The energy that existed here was extremely surging. Furthermore, the level was extremely high. Therefore, Zhuowen's injuries recovered rather quickly. During the process of Zhuowen healing, the sounds in the darkness became more and more concentrated and louder. But Zhuowen did not pay attention to these. He concentrated on healing his injuries. When dawn broke and the first ray of light fell, Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. The injuries on his body had already begun to scab. Although it looked like his entire body was covered in scars, and his face was also scabbed, looking very hideous. But Zhuowen knew that after his injuries were completely healed, these scars would gradually disappear. Zhuowen leaped up and stretched his body. Instantly, the sound of bones colliding with each other could be heard from his body. The primordial chant is really miraculous. Circulating this cultivation method last night actually greatly accelerated the speed of healing my injuries. Right now, my injuries are probably already 80% recovered. Zhuowen's eyes lit up, unable to contain the excitement in his heart. When he stepped onto the primordial chant, he already knew that the 100 territories outside the realm was very dangerous. He had just entered the 100 territories outside the realm and suffered such serious injuries. He originally thought that he was finished this time, but he did not expect that he was rescued from death's door. Speaking of which, he had to properly thank that benefactor who saved his life. At the same time, he discovered that those strange cries around him had already disappeared at some point, and the dark cave also gradually started to brighten when the first ray of sunlight shone into the ground. Zhuowen looked into the depths of the cave and discovered that under the light of dawn, the inside of the cave was extremely quiet. At the same time, he did not see anything inside the cave. Zhuowen frowned. His gaze flickered. Those hideous sounds he heard last night, He was sure that it was not a dream. Inside this cave, or even outside the cave, there was definitely something that existed. It was just that the night here was seriously too strange. His eyes and divine sense were unable to see that thing in the darkness at all. Zhuowen decided to enter the cave to take a look. After Zhuowen went deep into the cave, he discovered that this cave was completely empty. Nothing existed, and the grand array set up by the array disc at the entrance of the cave had not been touched and was in perfect condition. Zhuowen's brows furrowed slightly. He repeatedly searched several times, but he did not discover any sort of mechanism or the like inside the cave. He returned to the array disc once more and silently pondered, but he could not figure it out no matter how hard he racked his brains. Last night, the grand array was not damaged, indicating that nothing barged in, and he did not find anything inside the cave. This made Zhuowen puzzled. Could it be that those hair-raising sounds he heard last night were all illusions? No, Zhuowen's divine soul was already heaven-breaking 3 transformations. Furthermore, it fused with the primordial grand mist stone and had long become extraordinary. If it was an illusion, he could perceive it. But those sounds last night were too real. They were absolutely not illusions. Since it was not an illusion and there was nothing else inside the cave, then what in the world was the situation last night? Zhuowen's brows furrowed slightly, unable to figure it out after racking his brains. You're awake? Suddenly, a clear voice came from the cave entrance. Zhuowen looked towards the cave entrance and found a young girl looking at him in surprise. Beside the young girl, there was an old man. However, the old man looked at Zhuowen with a face full of vigilance. He saw the young girl forming a seal with both hands at the entrance of the cave. Zhuowen saw the array disc at the entrance of the cave flicker with light, and then the grand array at the entrance of the cave was automatically unlocked. Zhuowen became more and more certain that the people who saved him should be the old man and the young girl in front of him. I'm Zhuowen. Thank you for saving my life. Zhuowen hurriedly stepped forward and cupped his hands politely. He was very clear that if it were not for the medicine that was applied on his body, he might still be unconscious. At that time, it would be hard to say whether he could wake up or not. Chapter 3688. Your injuries actually healed so quickly? Rather, it was the old man behind the young girl who sized up Zhuowen in surprise, revealing a look of surprise. Zhuowen smiled slightly. For him to be able to recover so quickly, it was actually really all thanks to the primordial mantra's miraculousness. Furthermore, Zhuowen was looking forward to how powerful the primordial mantra was more and more. Thinking up to here, Zhuowen could not wait to cultivate and break through to the heaven-breaking realm. After all, the primordial mantra's lowest threshold was the heaven-breaking realm. He was currently unable to cultivate it yet. Seeing that Zhuowen did not plan on answering, the old man was somewhat displeased, but did not continue asking either. Fellow Taoist, since your injuries are already healed, then you can leave this place, the old man said indifferently. Zhuowen was stunned, puzzled in his heart. This old man's attitude towards him was somewhat off. Could it be that he offended this old man in some way? May I ask, which realm in the 100 Outer Realms is this place? It's my first time here, and I'm completely unfamiliar with the 100 Outer Realms. Zhuowen said awkwardly. Although he had the map of the 100 Outer Realms on him, it was only a rough map. As for the detailed map of the 100 Outer Realms, he did not have it. Furthermore, he was unfamiliar with this place and really did not know where to go. First time here? Weren't you a cultivator of the 100 Outer Realms before? The old man asked in surprise. Zhuowen was stunned and said in surprise, Yeah, I just came from the primordial Tao. I'm really not familiar with this place at all. Senior, please give me pointers. As Zhuowen said, his expression was somewhat puzzled. because he discovered that the aura of the old man in front of him was very weak, not even corroborating his Tao. Rather, it was the young girl beside the old man whose aura was much more vigorous than the old man's. She should already be around third blight cultivation. Since you came from the lower realm starry skies, why would you suffer such severe injuries? According to what this old man knows, the injuries on your body were absolutely caused by a heaven-breaking realm powerhouse. Furthermore, your cultivation has yet to break through heaven. Lower realms starry skies wanting to enter the primordial Tao, you have to be at least heaven-breaking realm. The old man's expression became even more vigilant, and he even began to pull the young girl back slowly. Zhuowen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He somewhat understood the old man's thoughts. Whether it was the old man or the young girl, their cultivation levels were too low. After knowing that his injuries might have been caused by a heaven-breaking realm elite, they might have thought that he was being hunted down by a heaven-breaking realm elite. The old man didn't want to have too much to do with him in case he got into trouble. Zhuowen could understand the old man's thoughts. When he was traveling through the stars, he already knew that there were a large number of mortals in the 100 outer domains. These mortals didn't have Tao roots, so they couldn't cross the Tao affirmation process. Their cultivation levels could only reach the virtual sky world at most. This old man should be a mortal from the 100 outer regions. The young girl's aptitude was not bad, reaching the third blight of half a step into the heaven-breaking realm. Elder, I'm not lying at all. However, I still have to thank the two of you for your help. Otherwise, this Zhuo's life would have been in danger. With that said, Zhuowen took out a small jade bottle from his great world and handed it to the girl. This is the Rebirth Good Fortune pill. It's very beneficial to this girl's cultivation. Take it as this Zhuo thanking the two of you for saving my life. The Rebirth Good Fortune pill was a kind of half-step heaven-breaking divine pill that Zhuowen created when he was traveling through the stars. This divine pill was very miraculous. It was very useful for cultivators half a step into the heaven-breaking realm. Even fifth blight cultivators could increase their cultivation speed. The old man took the jade bottle. After opening the bottle cap, he instantly felt an unconcealable strong medicinal power. Half-step heaven-breaking divine pill? Although the old man wasn't an alchemist, he was a doctor with great medical skills. He could tell at a glance that this Rebirth Good Fortune pill was a half-step heaven-breaking divine pill. Moreover, it wasn't an ordinary half-step heaven-breaking divine pill. The old man's expression eased a lot. He pointed to the east of the valley and said, "Keep going east. You'll reach a tribe in about half a day. If you're really new here, you can learn about it in that tribe. Also, these are realm stones, the common currency of the 100 regions outside the realm. Take them first." Saying so, the old man threw 10 thumb-sized crystals to Zhuowen. He didn't have the slightest intention of continuing to travel with Zhuowen. Zhuowen smiled bitterly. He knew that the old man still didn't believe him. Moreover, he also discovered that the realm stones that the old man gave him actually had very weak chaotic energy. The color of realm stones was very similar to chaos crystals, but they were much smaller in size. Moreover, the amount of chaotic energy inside was also pitifully small. Zhuowen guessed that these realm stones should have been refined from the waste materials inside chaos crystal mines. Apart from being used for transactions, the weak chaotic energy inside could not be absorbed at all. Zhuowen cupped his fists and asked seriously, "Elder, before leaving, can I ask one more question?" Because of the Rebirth Good Fortune pill, the old man's attitude toward Zhuowen was much better, and he nodded at Zhuowen. "Last night, when I woke up, why was my divine sense unable to enter the night? Moreover, I discovered that there seemed to be some kind of existence in the night, emitting strange cries. But when dawn just broke that day, I searched inside the cave and didn't discover anything. Even the great formation at the cave entrance was completely intact." Zhuowen slowly recounted the strange things that happened last night. You don't even know this? The old man started to believe a little that Zhuowen really came from the lower realm's starry skies. If he was a living being from the 100 regions outside the realm, he definitely wouldn't ask such a common question. There are many strange powers in the night of the 100 regions outside the realm. Once night arrives, many evil spirits will appear in the darkness. These evil spirits don't have physical bodies, but can possess bodies, suck blood essence, and other terrifying abilities. Once we mortals are in the night, without a light source, we'll undoubtedly die. There are even some evil spirits whose strength is extremely powerful, possessing the ability to kill shattering heaven-tier elite. Therefore, when night falls, even those shattering heaven-tier lords won't casually go out. When the old man mentioned the so-called evil spirits, his eyes revealed extreme fear. And Miao Zhen even revealed a look of fear. Obviously, the two of them were very afraid of the evil spirits mentioned by the old man. Evil spirits? Zhuowen's brows furrowed slightly. He didn't expect that the night of the 100 regions outside the realm would actually be so dangerous, and that the so-called evil spirits would actually appear. It seemed that the thing that appeared beside him last night should be the evil spirits that the old man spoke of. If it wasn't for the formation disk bringing him light, he would probably have been killed by that evil spirit. Big Brother Zhuo, I'm called Miao Zhen. You'd better be careful of things at night when you're outside. My formation disk has a light source, take it. If you get lost, you won't be targeted by the evil spirits. Miao Zhen handed the formation disk to Zhuowen, her beautiful eyes filled with an apologetic look. Although she really wanted to help Zhuowen, her grandfather had already told her beforehand that after saving Zhuowen, she was not allowed to have anything to do with him. Therefore, the only thing she could do now was to hand the formation disk to Zhuowen. Thank you, Miss Miao Zhen. Zhuowen put away the formation disk, cupped his fists at the two people, and left the valley. Grandfather, I think he really just came to the 100 regions outside the realm. Did you misunderstand him? Miao Zhen said somewhat reproachfully. The old man shook his head and said, Miao Zhen, you may know a person for a long time without understanding his heart. When you're outside, be more careful. This person's origins are unknown. Just based on his words alone, we can't fully believe it. Chapter 3689. Zhuowen followed the old man's instructions and walked towards the east. Half a day later, he indeed saw a small tribe. This tribe wasn't big indeed. It only had a population of about 30 households. What caught Zhuowen's attention the most was a damaged stone statue standing in the middle of the tribe. If it was an ordinary stone statue, Zhuowen wouldn't have noticed it. However, this stone statue emitted the same light source as the formation disk in Zhuowen's hand. Moreover, the range of this light source was very large. It just happened to cover the entire tribe. Zhuowen revealed a contemplative expression. He knew the light source of this stone statue should be to protect this tribe from evil spirits at night. Zhuowen also discovered that the people living in this tribe were basically mortals. Even the hunters, who were the backbone of the tribe, were only in the virtual sky world. Outsider, our tribe isn't a place for you to stay. Quickly scram. A tall and sturdy man blocked Zhuowen at the door. At the same time, everyone in the tribe looked at Zhuowen vigilantly. The women and children entered the house and coldly looked at Zhuowen through the cracks in the windows. Zhuowen was a bit speechless. He didn't expect this tribe to actually not welcome outsiders. After Zhuowen secretly cursed the old man, he took out the old man's realm stone and handed it to the man. He said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist, I only need to stay here for one night. I'll leave tomorrow." The man didn't even look at the realm stone Zhuowen gave him. He said with a cold gaze, "Outsider, I already said our tribe doesn't welcome you." Zhuowen frowned slightly. He didn't expect this man's attitude to be so strong. In a few hours the sky would darken. If he slept in the wild, it would be too dangerous. The formation disc Miaozhen gave him had a light source. However, Miaozhen reminded him that the light source of this formation disc was too weak. If he encountered a powerful evil spirit at night, this light source might not be able to block it. His injuries hadn't completely healed yet. If he encountered a powerful evil spirit, he really wouldn't be able to handle it. This was also why he didn't want to sleep in the wild. Just as the two of them were in a deadlock, hurried footsteps could be heard coming from the depths of the forest behind them. 5 people quickly walked out of the forest. These 5 people were all wearing animal skins. Judging from the style, they should be from this tribe. These 5 people were carrying a young man. However, this young man's face was dark and swollen. It seemed that he had been deeply poisoned. 7 lives venomous python's poison? Why would you provoke the 7 lives venomous python? The tall man looked at the poisoned young man with a gloomy face, but his expression was one of bewilderment. This poisoned young man was his younger brother. His heart was already in a mess. However, he knew that the 7 lives venomous python's poison was too terrifying, and their tribe's pharmacist had already left. No one could cure this poison. He could only watch as his brother died in front of him. Captain, it's our fault. In order to chase after the rainbow rabbit, Yuan Kong ran too fast. We couldn't catch up at all. But when we caught up, he was already bitten by the 7 lives venomous python. Captain, if you want to punish someone, can you punish me alone? This time, it's all my fault. A slightly plump young man stood out and said with a gloomy expression. The tall man silently took a look at Yuan Kong, who was lying on the ground, already at his last gasp, and said with a long sigh, "You all go back to the tribe first. I'll handle Yuan Kang's matter." The 5 young men looked at each other. They knew that when the tall man said so, he actually did not intend to blame them. However, they could not feel happy no matter what. Yuan Kong was their companion, and also the captain's younger brother. Now that Yuan Kong died together with them, their hearts were filled with guilt. "Your brother's poison, I can cure it." All of a sudden, a faint voice came over, attracting the attention of these 5 young men. They saw Zhuowen, who was standing at the tribe's entrance. However, Zhuowen's face was covered with scabs all over, looking very hideous. This made the 5 people frown subconsciously. The tall man suddenly turned around and stared straight at Zhuowen as he said, "Is this true?" Zhuowen nodded. He came to Yuan Kang's side, squatted down, and checked Yuan Kang's pulse. He found that Yuan Kang's pulse was already very weak. Yuan Kang's condition was extremely poor. He was already breathing more than he was exhaling. Moreover, Zhuowen also found that the 7 lives venomous python's poison had already spread to Yuan Kang's heart. However, this was not a problem for Zhuowen. After all, he was a first-rank heaven-breaking alchemist, and Yuan Kang was only a mortal who had not even reached the virtual sky world. He took out a heaven-reaching detoxification pill and fed it to Yuan Kang. Soon, the swelling on Yuan Kang's face began to gradually recede, and his complexion became slightly better. Even his pulse had become strong and vigorous again. Wow! Captain, Yuan Kang's complexion is much better. This person really has a way to cure the 7 lives venomous python's poison. The 5 youths surrounded Yuan Kang once again, and the way they looked at Zhuowen instantly changed. The tall man's eyes also lit up. He looked at Zhuowen gratefully and carried Yuan Kang on his back. "Brother, follow me into the tribe." The tall man smiled kindly at Zhuowen. Although he did not recognize the grade of the detoxification pill Zhuowen gave him, this medicinal pill was definitely very valuable since it could cure the 7 lives venomous python's poison. This person was so generous to give him a detoxification pill, so it was a great favor to him. The 5 young men surrounded Zhuowen, and their eyes were filled with respect and gratitude. Yuan Kang was their most important comrade. They had gone through fire and water many times, and they were as close as brothers. Now that Zhuowen saved Yuan Kang's life, in their hearts, it was equivalent to saving them once. Therefore, they were in awe of Zhuowen. During the process of entering the tribe, Zhuowen chatted with the tall man for a long time. Only then did he know that this tall man was called Yuan De, Yuan Kang's older brother. The tribe they were in was called the Yuan tribe. This name was given because all the people in the tribe had the surname Yuan. Yuan De was the tribe's hunting captain, the strongest person in the tribe, and also the tribe's real leader in name. Master Zhuo, you must be a pharmacist. You can even cure the 7 lives venomous python's poison. You are even better than pharmacist Lu. Among the 5 young men, the chubby young man was the most talkative. On the way, he kept pestering Zhuowen to talk. Zhuowen also knew that the chubby young man was called Yuan Zhong. He was the core figure among the 5 and was also Yuan Kang's buddy in the subway. Pharmacist Lu? Zhuowen asked casually. Yes, pharmacist Lu used to be a pharmacist in our Yuan tribe. He has great medical skills and can cure all kinds of diseases. Unfortunately, pharmacist Lu left without saying goodbye yesterday. It is said that he is going to the main city of Yunjin region. When Yuan Zhong set up to hear, he became somewhat listless. It seems that you have a good relationship with pharmacist Lu, Zhuowen said with a smile when he saw Yuan Zhong's expression. Haha, pharmacist Zhuo, you misunderstood. Brother Zhong, he is not reluctant to leave pharmacist Lu. He is reluctant to leave pharmacist Lu's granddaughter, Lu Miaozhen. A few young men behind Yuan Zhong covered their mouths and made fun of him. Yuan Zhong's face turned red and he hurriedly scolded. I didn't. Don't gossip and accuse me. Chapter 3690. No wonder Medicine Master Lu pointed him to the Yuan tribe. He wanted him to take over the old man's position as the new medicine master of the Yuan tribe. However, Zhuowen didn't reject it. The night in the 100 territories was too strange. Plus, he was still injured. The Yuan tribe was indeed the best place for him to stay. Moreover, he could slowly understand where the Yuan tribe was and where it was during the time they landed. After arriving at Yuan Da's house, Yuan Zhong and the other 4 bid farewell to Zhuowen and Yuan Da and left. Yuan Da's house was a very ordinary wooden house. There were about 4 rooms and it was quite spacious. When Zhuowen woke up in the valley, he had already discovered that the material level of the 100 territories was much higher than that of the starry sky. For example, he could casually crush a mountain or even a planet in the starry sky. But here in the 100 territories, he could barely crush a palm-sized rock. Plus, the gravity in the 100 territories was so terrifying that even Zhuowen was shocked. He couldn't even fly here. No wonder Duan Jipeng told him that if he wanted to fly in the 100 territories, he had to reach the heaven-crushing 3 transformations and the heaven-trampling transformation. Of course, with the help of a powerful divine ship, he could still fly even if he hadn't reached the heaven-trampling transformation. Now, Zhuowen could understand why the mortals in the 100 outer realms had such high cultivation. After all, the environment here was too strong. The living beings here were naturally not ordinary. In Yuan Da's house, other than him and his brother Yuan Kong, there was also Yuan Da's wife, Yuan Qing. After Yuan Da introduced Zhuowen as a medicine master, Yuan Qing was obviously more respectful to Zhuowen. Medicine Master Zhuo, you can stay here today. Tomorrow, I'll bring you to Medicine Master Lu's house. Yuan Da grinned. Brother Yuan, since Medicine Master Lu is your tribe's medicine master, why did he leave without saying goodbye? Zhuowen suddenly asked. Actually, the reason why Medicine Master Lu can stay in our Yuan tribe is because there are purple god flowers nearby. Medicine Master Lu said before that he would leave after picking enough purple god flowers. Moreover, our tribe has been treated by Master Lu before. His reputation in the Yuan tribe is very high. If he insists on leaving, we will not object. Yuan Da's gaze turned solemn as he said in a low voice, I also know that the reason Apothecary Lu wants to go to Yunjin City is so that his granddaughter can have a good future. Miaojin is different from us. She possesses a very good Dao foundation, and she'll definitely advance to the heaven-crushing stage in the future. She'll become a supreme being, while we're only mortals. Our statuses will be completely different in the future. When he spoke up to hear, Yuanda revealed an envious expression. He also yearned to possess an ancestral Dao root. Even if it was a bad ancestral Dao root, he would still be able to smoothly attain his Dao and step onto many colorful paths. Unfortunately, he didn't have a Dao root and was only an ordinary mortal. He would never be able to prove his Dao in his lifetime. This kind of thing was already destined at birth and could not be changed. Zhuowen opened his mouth. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. Actually, he also didn't have a Dao root, but he had succeeded in confirming his Dao by a freak combination of factors. But he knew that this was his secret, and he could not speak of it casually. After that, Zhuowen settled down in the Yuan tribe. Everyone in the tribe also knew that a new medicine master had arrived in the tribe. Moreover, he had cured the poison of the 7 lives venomous python in Yuan Kang's body. This caused Zhuowen's reputation to spread very quickly in the Yuan tribe. After Zhuowen moved into Medicine Master Lu's room, he discovered many medical books in there. Moreover, Zhuowen discovered that these medical books were all written by Medicine Master Lu himself. The wealth of knowledge in these books left even Zhuowen dumbfounded. Medicine and alchemical pills were actually inextricably linked. However, the threshold for alchemical pills was much higher than that of medicine. Moreover, the status of alchemists was much higher than that of medicine masters. Therefore, medicine masters had never been valued among cultivators. On the contrary, alchemists had extremely high statuses. In the past, Zhuowen didn't understand medicine masters, so he looked down on them. But now, after reading these medical books written by Medicine Master Lu, he finally understood that medicine was actually more powerful than alchemical pills in many aspects. In particular, medicine had an innate advantage over alchemical pills when it came to treating difficult and complicated diseases. Among these medical books, the one that made Zhuowen slap the table in praise was a medical book called Meridian Acupuncture Classic. In this book, the method of acupuncture alone was used to stimulate the body's major acupoints. Not only did it have the effect of speeding up one's cultivation, but it also had the miraculous effect of curing hundreds of diseases. Only a set of golden needles was needed to solve many difficult and complicated diseases. In the following time, Zhuowen stayed in the room and studied the medical books in the room as if he was intoxicated. With his comprehension, he could quickly comprehend and memorize all the medical books that he had read. After Zhuowen finished reading all the medical books, more than half a month had passed. His injuries were almost healed after recuperating for more than half a month. Most of the scabs on his face had also fallen off, revealing his fair skin. Although a small portion of scabs remained on his face and still looked a little ugly, his current appearance was much better than when he had just arrived in the Yuan tribe. In the past half a month, Zhuowen did not refuse anyone in the tribe who was injured or seriously ill. He did not use alchemical pills to treat the illness. Instead, he used the knowledge in the medical books to treat the illness with acupuncture and pharmacology. The results were amazing. He could use very common medicinal herbs to solve very complicated diseases and injuries. When he encountered some simple injuries, he did not even need medicinal herbs. He could completely solve them with acupuncture. That pharmacist Lu must have deliberately left these medical books here. Zhuowen thought of the old man. Although the old man's attitude towards him was very bad, he could not be blamed. However, he could tell that the old man was not a bad person. Everything he did was to ensure the absolute safety of his granddaughter. Zhuowen could see that the old man would protect Miaozhen at the cost of his life. In the past half a month, Zhuowen also learned a lot about this world from the tribe. Yuanda once told him that the area where the Yuan tribe was located was within the boundaries of Yunjin region. Within the territory of Yunjin region, there were many tribes and villages, as well as a small number of towns. Above Yunjin region was the Ji Prefecture Magistrate. It was said that there were many territories similar to Yunjin region within the Ji Prefecture Magistrate's boundaries. As for what was above the Ji Prefecture Magistrate, Yuanda did not know. Yuanda did not even know which of the 100 domains the Ji Prefecture Magistrate and Yunjin region were located in. Zhuowen understood that Yuanda was only an insignificant mortal in the 100 outer realms. Yuanda had probably never stepped out of Yunjin region's territory in his entire life. In his eyes, the Ji Prefecture Magistrate was an unattainable place. Needless to say, he did not know the names of the real domains in the 100 domains. This was the sorrow of mortals. They were trapped in one place for their entire lives and could not get out of this endless cycle of reincarnation. Zhuowen also knew that if he wanted to understand which domain he was in, he had to go to a higher place. Chapter 3691. Another month passed and Zhuowen's injuries were completely healed. The scabs on his face and body had all fallen off. In this month and a half, Zhuowen could be said to have completely integrated into the Yuan tribe. Yuanda trusted him even more. Moreover, Zhuowen had also obtained the map to Yunjin Hill from Yuanda. However, Zhuowen did not leave the Yuan tribe immediately. He planned to cultivate a medicine master in the Yuan tribe before leaving. It was to repay the Yuan tribe for taking him in. Meanwhile, Zhuowen could use this time to improve his cultivation and cultivate the 7 emotions steel seal. Medicine Master Zhuo, are you planning to teach me medical knowledge? Yuan Zhong, who was sitting across from Zhuowen, stood up in shock. Yes. I've observed all of you. Only you are interested in medicine and have some understanding of herbs. If I want to impart medical knowledge to someone, you're the most suitable one. Why? Yuan Zhong, are you unwilling? Zhuowen asked. Yuan Zhong quickly waved his hand and said, Why wouldn't I be willing? Of course I'm willing. Medicine Master Lu said that medical knowledge cannot be taught to outsiders. I wanted to learn but was rejected by Medicine Master Lu. I thought. Zhuowen was stunned. He did not expect Yuan Zhong to be rejected by Medicine Master Lu. Haha, Yuan Zhong, Medicine Master Lu was still in your tribe at that time. Now that Medicine Master Lu is no longer here, he left his medical books in your tribe. In fact, he has tacitly agreed to pass them to your tribe. Now, I'm just teaching you medical knowledge on behalf of Medicine Master Lu, Zhuowen said with a smile. Yuan Zhong trembled with excitement and quickly bowed to Zhuowen. Master. Zhuowen smiled faintly. This Yuan Zhong was quite clever. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, another half a year had passed. In this half a year, other than teaching Yuan Zhong and treating injured hunters, Zhuowen used the rest of his time to cultivate non-stop. Although the chaotic energy in the Yuan tribe could only be considered average, it was rich enough for Zhuowen. His cultivation speed was also very fast. He went from the middle stage of the 5th blight to the peak of the 5th blight. With Zhuowen's perception, the moment his cultivation reached the peak of the 5th blight, he had already touched the threshold of breaking the heavens. Zhuowen believed that if he continued to comprehend, he would be able to successfully break through the heavens in less than a year. However, he stopped cultivating. This was because he had thought of a terrifying fact, and that was whether or not an unbearable calamity would descend upon him the instant he broke through the heavens. He thought back to the miserable state he had been in when he had broken through to the 4th and 5th heavens blight. Thus, he had to be extremely cautious about breaking through to the heaven-crushing stage this time. However, the increase in his cultivation brought him many benefits. His strength had increased by quite a bit. If he didn't rely on his divine sense, he would be able to battle a heaven-crushing first change transformation divine transformation realm cultivator. At the same time, he began to comprehend the second steel of the seven emotions steel, the enraged steel. The enraged steel was even more powerful than the enraged steel. The main characteristic of this enraged steel was that it could absorb the emotions of anger and continuously accumulate them. Finally, it could unleash a very powerful power. Zhuowen sat cross-legged in the corridor outside the door. His hands were placed on his stomach, and two engravings hovered around him. These two engravings were of different colors. They were pink and red respectively. The pink engravings were the enraged steel, while the red engravings were the enraged steel. Ever since these two engravings were formed by Zhuowen, they would be attached to his body. Every time he walked past a living being, the two engravings would absorb the power of the corresponding emotions. Moreover, this accumulation would increase exponentially. The method of absorbing the power of emotions was something that Zhuowen had comprehended after comprehending the enraged steel. When he had first cultivated the enraged steel, he only knew how to use the enraged steel to affect his enemy's emotions. However, he hadn't thought that the enraged steel could absorb emotions and increase its power. The more Zhuowen cultivated, the more he admired the talent of the seven emotions, six desires Holy Lord who had created this mystical power. Creak! There was a knock on the door. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes, and the two engravings entered his body. Zhuowen stood up and opened the door. It was Yuan Zhong. Master, in the past 6 months I've learned most of the pharmacology. Next we should go out to look for herbs to practice, right? Yuan Zhong said excitedly. Zhuowen smiled and nodded. You're right. Today I'll go out with you to pick some herbs, and then you can concoct the medicine. Okay. Master, wait for me. I'll go back and get my weapon first. Yuan Zhong said with a simple and honest smile. Get your weapon? Zhuowen was surprised. Yes. The forest outside the tribe is very dangerous. It's full of terrifying beasts. Even our hunting team may not be safe when we go out. Master, you're a pharmacist and your body is weak. Of course, I'll take my weapon to protect you. Yuan Zhong said as he ran back to his house. Zhuowen was stunned. He shook his head and said nothing. With his current strength, there might not be anyone in the whole Yunjin territory who could hurt him. However, the people of the Yuan tribe didn't know that Zhuowen was a cultivator with breaking heaven tier strength. Added with the fact that Zhuowen looked so weak, they all thought that Zhuowen was only an ordinary pharmacist. In the past 6 months, many people in the tribe took good care of him. Yuan Zhong especially took care of him. Usually, when it came to heavy labor like moving things, Yuan Zhong would take the lead and help Zhuowen with it. Zhuowen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, he didn't plan to show his strength. After all, he liked the atmosphere of the tribe. If the people of the tribe knew that he was an elite with breaking heaven tier strength, the atmosphere would probably change immediately. During this period of time, he also knew that in the 100 domains outside the realm, there was a huge difference between breaking heaven tier cultivators and mortals. In the eyes of mortals, breaking heaven tier cultivators were high and mighty gods. They could kill them like ants with a flip of their hand. Zhuowen didn't want his relationship with the tribe to be estranged because of his strength. When Yuan Zhong came in front of Zhuowen again, he carried a wooden spear on his back and hurried over excitedly. What made Zhuowen even more speechless was that behind Yuan Zhong, there was a young man who also carried a wooden spear. Zhuowen also knew this young man. It was Yuan Kong, who had been poisoned by the 7 lives venomous python. Yuan Zhong saw Zhuowen's confusion, and scratched his head in embarrassment. Master, Yuan Kong knows that we're going out to gather herbs and is worried about our safety, so he also plans to go with us to protect you. Pharmacist Joie, the forest outside the tribe is very dangerous. There are many powerful ferocious beasts. Moreover, it's said that there are ferocious beasts comparable to breaking heaven-tier cultivators hidden in the depths of this vast forest. I'm worried about the two of you going in alone, so I'll go with you, Yuan Kong said with a grin. When Yuan Kong woke up and knew that it was Zhuowen who saved him, he was grateful and often visited Zhuowen. Moreover, every time he visited, he would bring a lot of delicious game. Chapter 3692. Yuan Kong, does Yuan De know that you're coming with us to pick herbs? Zhuowen asked in a deep voice. Yuan Kong smiled and said, of course he knows. If he didn't know, I wouldn't even be able to leave the tribe. If that's the case, then come with us. Zhuowen nodded in agreement. An ox cart had already been prepared outside the tribe. Yuan Kong drove the cart while Zhuowen and Yuan De sat behind. Zhuowen looked at the ox in surprise. This was a black ox. It looked very ordinary, but it had the strength of the Emperor realm. This made Zhuowen speechless. In the 100 territories outside the realm, an ordinary ox was more powerful than many cultivators in the lower realm. Yuan Kong, Yuan Zhong, protect Master Zhuo on the way. Don't let him get hurt, okay? At this moment, in the tribe, Yuan De led a group of people to send Zhuowen off. During this period of time, Zhuowen's medical skills had long been recognized by everyone. In addition, Zhuowen had saved many people in the tribe, so Zhuowen's prestige in the tribe had become very high, second only to Yuan De, the hunting team leader. This time, when Zhuowen left the tribe and planned to enter the forest to pick herbs, Yuan De and the others were actually a little worried. Yuan Kong and Yuan Zhong hurriedly agreed and expressed that they would definitely protect Zhuowen. Then, they drove the ox cart and left the tribe. Zhuowen and the other two headed west. That was the direction of the valley where Zhuowen had been. He planned to go to that valley to take a look. He remembered that there were many purple god flowers in the valley. In addition, there were many other kinds of herbs. Although it was a little far, with the speed of the ox cart, they could reach it in at most 2 hours. After traveling for a distance, Zhuowen suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky behind him with a puzzled expression. Master, what's wrong? Yuan Zhong asked curiously when he saw Zhuowen's abnormal behavior. Nothing. Zhuowen shook his head. The puzzlement in his eyes did not diminish. Just now, he had sensed a powerful fluctuation in the distant horizon. However, that fluctuation quickly disappeared. It came quickly and left quickly. A divine ship appeared in the sky hundreds of thousands of miles away from the Yuan tribe. On the deck of the divine ship stood 2 figures, a man and a woman. The man looked to be in his 40s. He had a goatee and a steady temperament. The woman, on the other hand, was much younger. She had a good figure and a pretty face. Miss, this is the Tsangyan Forest, the most remote place in Yunjin region. This subordinate has investigated. There are a total of over 50 tribes in the Ash Cloud Forest, with a total of over 10,000 people. The middle-aged man said respectfully to the young woman beside him. More than 10,000? That's just enough for Bloodthorn to complete the first stage of the blood sacrifice. The young woman opened her palm, revealing a blood-red spike pattern on her palm. Try not to alarm the other tribes. Move quickly. The young woman continued. The middle-aged man nodded. Thus, he put away the divine ship and brought the woman to the nearest tribe. We've finally arrived at the valley. Our luck is really bad this time. We actually encountered a few hidden tigers, Yuan Kong said as he wiped off the sweat on his forehead as the ox cart arrived at the entrance of a valley. There were bloodstains on his body. However, the bloodstains were not his. They belonged to the hidden tigers that they encountered along the way. It was undeniable that Yuan Kang's strength was not bad. His skills were even above Yuan Zhong's. He alone dealt with the hidden tigers without even needing Yuan Zhong's help. After the 3 of them entered the valley, they were shocked by the purple god flowers that covered the ground. "Oh my god, there are so many purple god flowers here!" Yuan Zhong and Yuan Kong were stunned. The purple god flower was the best healing herb in the ash cloud forest. Especially when mixed by an apothecary, its healing effect was even better. It was the favorite herb of many tribes in the ash cloud forest. However, although the ash cloud forest was huge, there were not many purple god flowers. Usually, the supply could not meet the demand. However, there were so many purple god flowers in the valley. It was much more than what Yuan Kong and Yuan Zhong had seen in the past few years. How could they not be shocked? "We are rich. There are so many purple god flowers. Our Yuan tribe can use them for a long time in the future. We can even sell them to other tribes." Yuan Kong laughed. "You two brats, don't pick too many. Since there are so many purple god flowers growing here, it is obvious that the soil here is suitable for them to grow. Leave a portion to grow in the future. In the future, your Yuan tribe will have an inexhaustible supply of purple god flowers." Zhuowen reminded them. Yuan Kong and Yuan Zhong came to their senses and nodded their heads. If not for Zhuowen's reminder, these two fellows who lost their heads from being carried away would probably really pluck all the violet god flowers here clean. While Yuan Kong and Yuan Zhong were busy picking the purple god flowers, Zhuowen entered the cave again. However, he did not find anything in the cave. The old man and the young girl had already left. Zhuowen sighed softly. He wondered if he would meet this pair of grandfather and granddaughter again when he went to Yunjin territory. At the same time, Zhuowen thought of Moyan Wushang. Back then, the heartless and desireless pearl had brought Moyan Wushang into the 100 domains. However, he did not know where the heartless and desireless pearl was now. "I don't even know which domain I am in now. It is too early to think about this." Zhuowen smiled bitterly. He knew that he was too weak now. After he became stronger, he could entrust some powerful organizations to find the whereabouts of the heartless and desireless pearl. As long as he could find the heartless and desireless pearl, he would be able to find Moyan Wushang. Of course, the prerequisite was that he had to become stronger first. After that, Zhuowen waited for Yuan Zhong to pick the other medicinal herbs in the valley. Then, he began to teach Yuan Zhong how to make medicine. Yuan Zhong was very serious about learning. He was also very perceptive. After failing a few times, he made the simplest healing medicine. Yuan Kong was guarding the entrance of the valley to prevent wild beasts from invading and disturbing Zhuowen and Yuan Zhong. After Zhuowen handed over a few simple methods of making medicine, he realized that it was already afternoon. "Yuan Zhong, let's go back. The medicinal herbs you picked this time are enough for you to practice for half a month. After you are done practicing, you can come and pick the medicinal herbs," Zhuowen said. Yuan Zhong nodded. After packing up, he followed Zhuowen out of the valley. When Yuan Kong saw the two of them coming out, he hurriedly brought the ox cart over. After Zhuowen and Yuan Zhong got on the ox cart, he drove the ox cart back to the tribe along the original path. When Zhuowen and the other two returned to the tribe, two uninvited guests came to the Yuan tribe. These two people were the middle-aged man and the young woman. "Uncle Zhou, I can feel the power of the blood thorn. It seems to be excited. The endless power is really too strong." The young woman looked at the crowd in the Yuan tribe and licked her lips. Her eyes were filled with bloodlust and greed. "If I kill more people, Blood Thorn will accept me. I will be able to obtain even more power." As she spoke, the young woman walked towards the entrance of the Yuan tribe. The middle-aged man's eyes flickered, but he still followed closely behind. "Who are you?" At the entrance of the tribe, a hunting team member was guarding. He held a wooden spear and stopped the young woman and the middle-aged man. "Hee hee, you are all my food." Chapter 3693. Thump. This hunting squad member's pupils were wide open as he stared fixedly at the young woman in front of him. He never would have thought that this young woman would actually suddenly make a move to take his life. Ah! Murder! Within the tribe, some of the clansmen near the entrance saw the young woman dig out the heart of the hunting squad member at the entrance, and they instantly screamed, their gazes filled with terror. Yuanda heard the news and quickly brought the hunting squad over. When he saw the hunting squad member at the entrance had his heart pierced and was casually thrown on the ground, his pupils couldn't help but constrict. Yuanda's gaze was cold as he looked at the young woman and middle-aged man at the entrance. Suppressing the anger in his heart, he said in a low voice, "Friends, our Yuan tribe has never met you, why did you attack us?" The young woman looked indifferently at Yuanda and mocked, "Do I need a reason to kill you lowly mortals? If I want to kill you, I'll kill you. Moreover, to be able to die in my hands, it's the fortune of you lowly mortals. You should be kneeling on the ground and piously begging for death. You!" Yuanda's expression changed greatly, and he had a bad guess in his heart. We're shattering heaven realm cultivators. You ants without Tao roots, do you still want to resist me? The young woman mocked. Thump. Once the young woman's words left her mouth, everyone in the tribe was so scared that they went limp on the ground. A shattering heaven realm expert, in their eyes, was a godlike existence. Such an existence could crush all of them to death with a single finger. Yuanda knelt heavily on the ground and fiercely kowtowed. "My lords, if our Yuan tribe has offended you in any way, then come at me, Yuanda. Let my clansmen go. I, Yuanda, beg you, my lords." After Yuanda finished speaking, he continuously kowtowed, and his posture was very humble. He was very clear how strong a shattering heaven realm expert was. Crushing their tribe to death was as easy as crushing ant. The clansmen of the Yuan tribe also knelt on the ground, their gazes revealing reverence, and they all begged for the two's forgiveness. Bang! The young woman took a step forward and kicked Yuanda's body. Poochie! Yuanda spat out a mouthful of blood and flew out, smashing into the house closest to him. Yuanda struggled for a long time in the ruins, but he couldn't get up at all. He could only barely crawl out. Mortals will always be mortals. I only used a little bit of my strength, and you can't take it anymore. How weak! A mocking look appeared in the young woman's eyes as she laughed disdainfully. The people of the Yuan tribe all knelt on the ground with their heads lowered. They didn't say a word as they silently endured the young woman's mockery. "My lord, we're only mortals, ants. Can you let us go? We're just ants in your eyes." Yuanda struggled to get up, looked straight at the young woman, and asked word by word. "No. And I'm going to kill everyone in your tribe. All of you are my sacrifices." The young woman's lips curled into a mocking smile. The words she said made everyone in the Yuan tribe despair. A bitter smile appeared on Yuanda's face. He knew that their Yuan tribe was finished. "Uncle Zhou, kill them all," the young woman said to the middle-aged man behind her. The middle-aged man's lips curled into a faint smile, and he said, "There are so few people in this tribe. I don't even need to do anything. My pet can get rid of these people." As he spoke, the middle-aged man waved his right hand, and a huge python that was dozens of feet long appeared out of thin air. It spat out its green tongue as it looked down coldly at the people below. The people of the Yuan tribe were all trembling as they curled up together. "If you dare to do anything, you won't be able to leave the Yuan tribe alive today." Suddenly, at the entrance of the tribe, a cold voice slowly sounded. The voice was like thunder ringing in everyone's ears. Suddenly, the people of the Yuan tribe all looked at the entrance of the tribe. Even the young woman and the middle-aged man couldn't help but look at the entrance of the tribe. They saw 3 figures appear at the entrance of the tribe. The person in the lead was wearing a long black robe, and he looked to be around 27 or 28 years old. The 2 people behind the young man in the black robe were around 20 years old. They were both wearing animal skin clothes, and it was obvious that they were from the Yuan tribe. The three of them were Zhuowen, Yuan Kong, and Yuan Zhong, who had returned from the valley. When they arrived at the entrance of the tribe, they saw the hunting team member who was killed. Their expressions changed drastically, and they hurriedly entered the tribe. They saw everyone in the tribe kneeling in front of the unfamiliar man and woman. "Father! Captain!" Yuan Kong and Yuan Zhong saw Yuan De, who was lying in the ruins not far away. Their expressions changed drastically, and they both ran towards Yuan De. The young woman and the middle-aged man didn't stop Yuan Kong and Yuan Zhong, but looked at Zhuowen, who was wearing a black robe, with an unfriendly gaze. "What did you just say?" The young woman looked at Zhuowen from head to toe and asked faintly. "I said, if you dare to do anything, you won't be able to leave the Yuan tribe alive today," Zhuowen said calmly. The young woman's expression darkened, but she laughed. "You're just a fifth blight ant? Do you know who you're facing? With your cultivation level, I can crush you to death with one hand." Zhuowen's expression was still calm. He had already seen through the cultivation of the man and woman. The young woman should have just advanced to the first heaven-breaching transformation stage. She was only at the early stage of the first heaven-breaching transformation stage, and her aura wasn't even stable yet. As for the middle-aged man, his aura was much more stable than the woman's. He should be at the peak of the first heaven-breaching transformation stage. With Zhuowen's current strength, these two people were nothing in his eyes. However, Zhuowen found it strange that these two first heaven-breaching transformation stage experts would come to the Ash Cloud Forest. As far as he knew, the Ash Cloud Forest was the most remote area in the Yunjin region. Here, the people who lived were basically mortals. Even if they were cultivators, they were only ordinary cultivators who couldn't break through the first heaven-breaching transformation stage. But now two first heaven-breaching transformation stage experts suddenly appeared. This was a bit strange. "Medicine Master Zhua, leave quickly. These two people are first heaven-breaching realm cultivators. They're not people we mortals can afford to offend," Yuan De hurriedly said to Zhuowen. At the same time, Yuan De stood up with difficulty, knelt down, and said to the young woman and the middle-aged man, "Lords, Medicine Master Zhua isn't a member of our Yuan tribe. He's just passing by our Yuan tribe. You're only looking for trouble with our Yuan tribe. It has nothing to do with Medicine Master Zhua." Yuan Zhong and Yuan Kong were dumbstruck instead. They never would have imagined that this young woman and middle-aged man were actually two heaven-shattering realm powerhouses. Chapter 3694. Noisy. The young woman snorted. The giant python beside her suddenly rushed out, opened its bloody mouth, and tried to swallow Yuan Kong, Yuan Zhong, and Yuan De, and the other two were already scared stiff. They watched as the giant python arrived in front of them. In the next second, its bloody mouth was about to swallow them completely. At this moment, a figure stood in front of the three of them. Zhuowen's fist landed on the python's head. Bang! This punch was powerful and heavy. The giant python screamed as its head was smashed into smithereens. It fell to the ground and breathed its last. Yuan De and the other two looked at the giant python's corpse in a daze. Then, their gazes fell on the figure who punched the giant python to death. They were surprised to find that the figure was none other than Master Zhua, who was so weak in their eyes. The people of the Yuan tribe were also dumbfounded as they looked at Zhuowen. Master Zhua, who usually looked weak, killed such a terrifying giant python with one punch. It was unbelievable. The young woman and the middle-aged man's expressions changed slightly. The giant python's strength was around the early stage of the fifth decay. It was easy for it to deal with ordinary fifth decay cultivators. However, it was killed by this person with one punch. Interesting? Your strength has somewhat exceeded my expectations. However, the fifth heaven's decay is only the fifth heaven's decay in the end. You'll soon know how great the gap between you and Heavenbreaker is." The young woman sneered as a powerful aura exploded from her body. This aura was too terrifying. The people of the Yuan tribe could not help but lie on the ground under this aura as if there was a giant rock on their bodies. "Miss, let me do it," the middle-aged man said. The young woman shook her head and said, "Uncle Zhou, you don't need to do anything for this ant. After all, I just broke through and haven't tested my strength yet. Now is a good opportunity." Hearing this, the middle-aged man nodded and took a step back. Zhuo had killed the giant python with a single punch, which had shocked him. However, in his opinion, this black-robed young man was far from being a match for the young woman. "Let's fight outside the tribe." Zhuo's eyes were calm. He took a step forward and his figure was like a ghost as he rushed out of the open space outside the tribe. The young woman frowned slightly. She looked coldly at the people of the Yuan tribe and left the tribe as well. In her opinion, these mortals could be killed at any time. But the black-robed youth in front of her really made her unhappy. He was clearly fifth blight trash, yet he dared to act so pretentious in front of her. She wanted to see what kind of expression this young man would have when she stepped on him. After Zhuo, the young woman, and the middle-aged man left the tribe, Yuan De and the others let out sighs of relief. "Father, Apothecary Zhuo wants to fight with them. What should we do?" Those two were heaven-shattering realm powerhouses. How could Master Zhuo possibly be a match for him? Yuan Kong said anxiously. Yuan De smiled bitterly and could only console her. Alchemist Zhuo might have a way to escape. After all, he's also a cultivator. Yuan Kong and Yuan Zhong looked at each other and revealed a bitter smile. From the young woman's words and expression, they could see that Zhuowen's cultivation was much weaker than theirs. There was no doubt that Zhuowen was much weaker in this battle. Bang! Suddenly, a terrifying fluctuation came from outside the tribe. Then, Yuan De and the others saw a figure flying back in a sorry state and smashing into a house not far away. Rumble! That house directly collapsed and turned into ruins. "It's over." Apothecary Zhuo lost so quickly. The bitter smile on Yuan Da's face became more and more intense, and the people of the tribe were even more deathly silent. Their faces were filled with despair. They also knew that after Apothecary Zhuo died, it would be their turn. At this moment, a figure flashed over from the entrance of the tribe. This figure was the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man came to the ruins with an anxious expression and picked up the figure that fell in the ruins. Isn't that Apothecary Zhuo? That's that woman." Yuan Kong couldn't help but cry out as if he had seen a ghost. Yuan De, who originally revealed a look of despair, couldn't help but look over. He just happened to see the figure that the middle-aged man helped up. It was actually that young woman. The young woman's face was as pale as snow, and there was a huge knife wound on her chest that was bleeding non-stop. This lord was defeated? Yuan Da's pupils contracted to the size of needles, and his heart was like raging waves, extremely unsettled. Didn't this young woman vow that Apothecary Zhuo was an ant that couldn't even crush the heavens? Why was this woman defeated by Apothecary Zhuo now? Could it be that Apothecary Zhuo was actually also a heaven-crushing cultivator, and one that was even more powerful than this woman? "So weak, are you really at the divine fetal transformation stage?" At this moment, Zhuowen slowly walked over from the entrance of the tribe. His figure became incomparably tall in the eyes of the people of the tribe. Splat! The young woman was so angry that she spat out another mouthful of blood. She stared coldly at Zhuowen, but her heart was like raging waves in a stormy sea. She couldn't understand how Zhuowen was clearly only a fifth heaven's blight cultivator, so how could he be so powerful? Her attack was broken in just one move, and then she was severely injured by Zhuowen's primordial flying blade. The middle-aged man's expression became more and more serious as he stared intently at Zhuowen, who was standing at the entrance of the tribe. He had seen the moment when the two of them exchanged blows. The strength that Zhuowen had erupted with was extremely terrifying and definitely not inferior to his. This person was definitely at the late stage of the divine fetal transformation stage, or even the peak of the divine fetal transformation stage. I really didn't expect that a peak divine fetal transformation stage expert would be willing to live in seclusion here and even become the apothecary of this small tribe, the middle-aged man said solemnly. Zhuowen didn't comment. His cultivation was only at the peak of the fifth heaven's blight, but he couldn't be bothered to explain to the middle-aged man. Sir, before you attack, you'd better think twice before you act. We're from the Yunjin Overlord residence, and Miss Yu Fu is the daughter of the Yunjin Overlord. Now that you've injured Miss Yu Fu, you've already committed treason. If you don't want to be hunted down by the Yunjin Overlord residence, kneel in front of Miss Yu Fu now, kowtow, apologize and become Miss Yu Fu's most loyal dog. When the middle-aged man saw that Zhuowen was about to walk over again, his eyes narrowed slightly, and he explained their origins. What? They're actually from the Yunjin Overlord residence? Heavens, this! Yuanda almost cried out in shock. Although he was only a mortal, as a person from the Yunjin territory, he naturally knew about the existence of the Yunjin Overlord residence. It was the highest organization that ruled the entire Yunjin territory, and the Yunjin Overlord was the ruler of Yunjin territory. He had supreme authority and power, and was an existence that they respected like a god. These two people were actually from the Yunjin Overlord residence, and the young woman was the daughter of the Yunjin Overlord residence. Her identity was too noble. Yuanda and the others thought that Zhuowen would be afraid of the Yunjin Overlord residence. Unexpectedly, Zhuowen's expression was very calm, and there was nothing strange about it. Chapter 3695. How dare you say that you want to kill us? The middle-aged man's face turned gloomy and anger rose in his heart. The Yunjin Lord Mansion had supreme authority in the Yunjin territory and no cultivator dared to overstep their authority. However, the young man in front of him was too presumptuous. After knowing that they were from the Yunjin Lord Mansion, he still dared to kill them. Originally, I saw that you were a talent and wanted to give you a way out by letting you join the Yunjin Lord Mansion. Unfortunately, you didn't cherish the opportunity. The middle-aged man slowly stood up and his eyes shone with a blazing cold light and murderous intent. At the same time, an extremely terrifying aura erupted from the middle-aged man's body. This aura was much stronger than the young woman's. The peak of the divine transformation stage? Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and saw the middle-aged man's specific cultivation at a glance. Yuanda and the group of people from the Yuan tribe were trembling in fear. Although they were not clear about the middle-aged man's specific cultivation, they could feel that the middle-aged man was much stronger than the young woman. Master Zhuo Yuan Kong and Yuan Zhong were even more worried. Uncle Zhou, kill him for me. The young woman, Yu Fu, shouted with resentment in her eyes. She wanted to make Zhuowen, this fellow who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth, pay a disastrous price. The middle-aged man nodded and strode toward Zhuowen. His aura was getting stronger and stronger. Superpower tornado. The middle-aged man knew that Zhuowen was not weak, so he did not dare to be careless in this battle. He used his best superpower tornado right from the start. A violent wind rose around Zhuowen. The wind was like a whirlpool that wrapped around Zhuowen and trapped him like a prison. At the same time, the middle-aged man took a step forward and his speed suddenly increased. In an instant, he appeared above Zhuowen's head. The middle-aged man blasted out a palm and landed on the top of Zhuowen's head. The main function of the superpower tornado was to bind. It could use the strong power of the tornado to completely imprison the enemy's movements. "You're dead meat." The middle-aged man sneered as he unleashed the power of his palm. Zhuowen was still standing in his original spot. Suddenly, his entire body erupted with purple light, and soon after, purple snow began to fall around him. The purple snow drifted and actually broke the surrounding whirlwinds. At the same time, the moment the middle-aged man's palm landed on the top of Zhuowen's head, he stomped on the ground with his right foot and disappeared like a ghost. The middle-aged man's expression changed slightly. He abruptly withdrew his palm force and blasted it behind him. Bang! His palm slammed into a purple saber light. The powerful force forced him to retreat. However, the middle-aged man was not a simple person. Although Zhuowen's figure had become erratic under the enhancement of the purple snow, he was still very calm. He kicked out with both feet and disappeared from where he stood like a breeze. His speed was not inferior to Zhuowen's at all. Bang bang bang! Instantly, two figures that could only be seen as afterimages collided with each other in midair, creating extremely terrifying energy ripples. So fast! So powerful! All of the members of the Yuan tribe were stunned. Looking at the two afterimages that could barely be seen, they finally truly understood just how terrifying and powerful heaven-crushing cultivators were. Yu Fu's expression changed drastically. She was very clear about Uncle Zhou's strength. He was at the peak of the divine fetal transformation stage, yet he was unable to do anything to this black-robed young man. What was even more unbearable for Yu Fu was that the two of them were actually evenly matched. She even suspected that Zhuowen was really a fifth blight cultivator. Damn it! If I could complete the initial blood sacrifice, then I would be able to use the power of the blood thorn. How could I allow this piece of trash to be so arrogant? Yu Fu looked at the blood-colored pattern on her right palm with an unwilling expression in her beautiful eyes. The blood sacrifice was not complete, so the astral weapon on her body would not listen to her, nor would it give her power. After about a few hundred rounds, Zhuowen and the middle-aged man both retreated dozens of steps after exchanging a heavy punch. They stopped on both sides and faced each other from a distance. The middle-aged man stared at Zhuowen with a serious gaze and said in a deep voice, "Sir, I'm Zhou Xianwen of the Yunjin Lord's estate. I can guarantee that if you join the Yunjin Lord's estate, you will definitely be put in an important position." The middle-aged man was very clear that a peak divine fetal transformation stage cultivator was already considered a powerhouse in the Yunjin Lord's estate. Even within the Yunjin Lord's estate, there were not many of such powerhouses. The young man in front of him did not look more than 10,000 years old, but he had the strength of a peak divine fetal transformation stage cultivator. Such a genius was very rare in the Yunjin Lord's estate. Therefore, Zhou Xianwen wanted to rope him in, and his attitude was much better than before. "You don't have the qualifications to rope me in," Zhuowen said indifferently. The middle-aged man was so angry that his eyes almost popped out. This Zhuowen was too ungrateful. I tried to rope him in with good intentions, but he rejected me without hesitation. "Tell me, why do you want to deal with the Yuan tribe?" Zhuowen suddenly asked. The middle-aged man said coldly, "I can't tell you that. Since you don't know what's good for you, I don't have to hold back. I'll destroy you today." As he said that, the middle-aged man took out a golden feather fan from his spirit ring. Humph! Uncle Zhou took out the golden afterglow fan. "This guy is dead for sure." When Yu Fu saw the middle-aged man take out the golden afterglow fan, the corners of her mouth revealed a trace of a sinister smile. This golden afterglow fan was a rank 1 heaven-breaking divine artifact. Its power was terrifyingly powerful. One had to know that in the 100 outer territories, heaven-breaking divine artifacts were very rare. Many heaven-breaking 3rd transformation and 4th transformation powerhouses did not have a decent divine artifact. Generally, those who could possess divine artifacts were people with powerful backgrounds and strength. This golden afterglow fan was given to Zhou Xianwen by her father. With Zhou Xianwen's strength combined with the golden afterglow fan, It was enough to withstand the attack of an early heaven-breaking second transformation cultivator. Rank 1 heaven-breaking divine artifact. Zhuowen raised his eyebrows. He did not expect this middle-aged man to have a heaven-breaking divine artifact. He had heard from Duan Jipeng that there had always been a shortage of heaven-breaking divine artifacts in the 100 Outer Territories. This middle-aged man was only at the fetal god transformation stage, but he already had a heaven-breaking divine artifact. It seemed like he was quite wealthy. Sir, I'll give you one more chance now. This is your last chance. Join the Yunjin Lord's residence. The middle-aged man held the golden afterglow fan in his hand, and his entire person became domineering and confident. However, Zhuowen shook his head and said mockingly, I said, you're not qualified. So what if you take out a heaven-breaking divine artifact? If you're not qualified, then you're not qualified. Yu Fu sneered and whispered, what an idiot! With the golden afterglow fan, Uncle Zhou's strength will increase by several times. You're a frog at the bottom of a well. The middle-aged man's gaze became even colder. If that's the case, then don't blame me for being rude. As he spoke, the middle-aged man stood still and waved the golden afterglow fan in his hand. Chapter 3696. The people of the Yuan tribe had already left the tribe. They looked at the ruins of the tribe that had been destroyed by the energy of the golden light and were all in despair. The destruction caused by the middle-aged man was beyond their imagination. How could Master Zhuo withstand such power? When the golden light gradually faded, the middle-aged man's face changed. He found that Zhuowen, who he thought would be dead, was standing quietly on the spot. A divine sword that was burning with the green lotus flame was surrounding Zhuowen's body. However, he could see that the divine sword was not real but was somewhat illusory. How is this possible? The middle-aged man's pupils contracted, and he could not help but take a step back. It can't be. This guy is unscathed. Yu Fu's beautiful eyes were wide open as she looked at Zhuowen in disbelief. The people of the Yuan tribe were even more stunned. Is this all you've got? You're too weak. Zhuowen walked over slowly with a calm look. The soul sword essence was blooming with the green lotus flame, and it surrounded his body. You didn't use your full strength just now? Zhou Xianwen's face darkened. Who are you? I'm just a nobody, but it's enough to kill you. After Zhuowen finished speaking, he turned into a shadow and arrived in front of Zhou Xianwen in an instant. Zhou Xianwen roared and blocked in front of him with the golden glow fan in his hand. A gust of golden wind whistled. Sword slash. Zhuowen sneered and raised his right sword finger above his head and slashed down. The soul sword essence with the surging green lotus flame smashed down vertically from above. The golden wind was torn apart by the terrifying sword essence. Then, the soul sword essence slashed on the golden glow fan. The terrifying green lotus flame exploded and instantly ignited a terrifying sea of fire around Zhou Xianwen. Crack! The golden glow fan in front of Zhou Xianwen shattered and his body was engulfed by the green lotus flame. He let out a shrill scream. However, the scream did not last long. Zhou Xianwen was completely burned to ashes, and even his spiritual soul was not spared. Looking at Zhou Xianwen, who was completely burned to ashes, Zhuowen revealed a pained expression. The green lotus fire was too powerful. Even Zhou Xianwen was burned to ashes, which meant that this person's spirit ring and the golden cloud fan were also destroyed. He would not be able to get any benefit. No. How is this possible? Uncle Zhou is dead? Yu Fu slumped to the side, her eyes glazed over. The people of the Yuan tribe kept quiet out of fear as they looked at Zhuowen with eyes full of respect. Zhou Xianwen was such a powerful expert, yet he was easily dealt with by Zhuowen. They also knew that Zhuowen should be a very powerful and terrifying expert. Zhuowen walked towards Yu Fu and lifted her up. He said indifferently, Speak. Why did you come to Ash Cloud Forest? Why did you kill the people of the Yuan tribe? Yu Fu finally came back to her senses. She looked at Zhuowen, her eyes filled with fear, and said repeatedly, I beg you to let me go. As long as you let me go, I will ask my father to bestow you with many cultivation resources. I beg you. Yu Fu no longer had any intention to resist. She only begged Zhuowen to spare her life. Answer my question. I don't have enough patience. Maybe I can't wait and will search your soul. When there is a problem with your soul, don't blame me. Zhuowen said indifferently. Yu Fu's delicate body trembled and she screamed, Don't search my soul. I will tell you. I will tell you now. I won't hide anything. Thus, under Zhuowen's coercion and enticement, Yu Fu confessed her purpose of coming to Ash Cloud Forest in full detail. After Zhuowen heard it, his face did not look too good. It turned out that Yu Fu and Zhou Xianwen came to Ash Cloud Forest to kill the mortals here to complete the blood sacrifice and develop the astral weapon fragment Blood Thorn in Yu Fu's body. Zhuowen grabbed Yu Fu's palm. Sure enough, he saw a blood-red pattern on her palm, which looked like some kind of sharp thorn. You planned to slaughter the Yuan tribe. Zhuowen's gaze became colder and colder. He really did not expect that Yu Fu and the others came to slaughter these weak mortals. This was too much. It was normal for cultivators to die in a fight. But for cultivators to slaughter mortals unilaterally, this was against the laws of nature and was extremely cruel. Although Zhuowen heard from Duan Jipeng that the astral weapon required a blood sacrifice, he had never seen it with his own eyes. But now that he saw it with his own eyes, his heart was filled with anger. He had stayed in the Yuan tribe for more than half a year and had a certain degree of affection for the tribe. If he did not arrive in time, the Yuan tribe would have been slaughtered. Fellow Taoist, I have already told you everything I know. Shouldn't you let me go? Yu Fu asked tentatively. Of course I can let you go. But you have to hand over the blood thorn in your body. Zhuowen said indifferently. After knowing that the astral weapon required a blood sacrifice, Zhuowen hated the astral weapon more and more. If Yu Fu still had this astral weapon fragment on her, she would come to the Ash Cloud Forest to slaughter mortals in the future. If he wanted to put an end to this, he had to take away the astral weapon fragment on her body. What? You are too much. The blood thorn is the astral weapon fragment that my father obtained with great difficulty. How dare you take it away? Don't even think about it. Yu Fu shouted. Then, her right hand suddenly flashed with a terrifying bloody light and suddenly blasted towards Zhuowen's abdomen. Zhuowen was already on guard against Yu Fu. He took a few steps back and also blasted out a palm. Poochie! Zhuowen only felt that he had hit some kind of sharp thorn. His palm was penetrated and blood spurted out. And Yu Fu took this opportunity to summon a divine ship and fled into the distance. You are courting death. Zhuowen's gaze darkened. He shouted angrily and summoned a divine soul sword intent and stood on the divine ship. Boom! The divine ship exploded, and Yu Fu vomited a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. Her beautiful face was terrifyingly pale. Looking at Yu Fu's appearance, Zhuowen knew that she must have sacrificed herself to the astral weapon fragment on her body and activated the power of the blood thorn in advance. Otherwise, with Yu Fu's strength, it would be difficult for her to hurt him. And what made Zhuowen even more surprised was that his palm was bleeding after being hit by the blood thorn. Even if he used the shattered divine soul sword to stop the bleeding, the effect was very poor. It was very difficult to completely stop the bleeding. This astral weapon fragment is indeed something. Zhuowen's face was gloomy. He took a step forward and arrived in front of Yu Fu. He did not even wait for Yu Fu to speak and pointed his left sword finger at Yu Fu's glabella. The powerful shattered divine soul sword invaded her divine soul world and completely destroyed her divine soul. Yu Fu screamed and her eyes widened. She was no longer breathing. After Yu Fu died, Zhuowen casually shot out a divine flame and burned Yu Fu and the astral weapon in her body to ashes. However, Zhuowen soon discovered that there was a bloody light flickering in the ashes. He saw a sharp thorn that was a few inches long lying quietly in the ashes, flashing with a bloody light. Chapter 3697. Zhuowen played with the blood thorn in his hand and observed it for a while. He found that there was nothing special about this blood thorn other than its material being different from a heaven-breaking divine artifact. However, Zhuowen did not underestimate this blood thorn. His right palm was still bleeding, and with his shattering divine power, he could only reduce the bleeding. It would probably take at least a few hours to completely stop the bleeding. From this, it could be seen how terrifying this blood thorn was. This bleeding effect made Zhuowen very wary. He also knew very well that if this blood thorn pierced the enemy's vital parts, with its bleeding effect, it would be enough to cause a terrifying injury to the enemy. Zhuowen put away the blood thorn. After all, this item was a fragment of an astral weapon. Although he did not know the specific grade and use of this astral weapon, he did know that astral weapons were very precious in the 100 territories outside the realm. Although he did not like the blood sacrifice function of an astral weapon, this item was indeed of research value. When he had time, he would properly study this blood thorn. At this moment, the people of the Yuan tribe had already entered the ruins of the tribe. They naturally saw the scene of Zhuowen killing Yu Fu and Zhou Xianwen. These two people were high and mighty heaven-breaking realm elite. In the blink of an eye, they were killed by Master Zhua, who was just an ordinary person in their eyes. Master Zhua. No, Lord Zhua, they are people from the Yunjin Lord's estate? You killed them, I'm afraid there will be big trouble. Yuanda opened his mouth. He wanted to call Zhuowen Master Zhua, but soon realized that it was wrong and hurriedly changed it to an honorific. Moreover, when Yuanda said this, he did not dare to get close to Zhuowen. Instead, he stood a few meters away from Zhuowen and clasped his hands respectfully. Yuan Zhong and Yuan Kong, who were usually closest to Zhuowen, looked at Zhuowen with complicated expressions. They also did not dare to get close to Zhuowen in the slightest, but looked at Zhuowen in awe. As for the rest of the tribe, they all lowered their heads, not daring to look at Zhuowen. It was as if looking at Zhuowen would offend Zhuowen. Zhuowen was stunned, and then he sighed deeply in his heart. Only now did he realize exactly how great the gap and barrier between Heaven-Breaker realm experts and mortals in the 100 outer regions was. In the eyes of mortals, heaven-shattering realm experts were lofty existences that were otherworldly, and they had to revere them like gods, not daring to have the slightest bit of disobedience or refutation. Now that he was recognized as a Heaven-Breaker master by the Yuan tribe, he knew that he could no longer stay in the Yuan tribe. It doesn't matter. Yunjin Lord's mansion might not be able to catch me. Zhuowen's gaze was calm. During his time in the Yuan tribe, he wasn't really isolated from the rest of the world. He would often come into contact with some cultivators who ventured into the Tsangyan forest as well as the caravans that passed by. As a result, he had a general understanding of the forces in Yunjin territory. Yunjin Lord's mansion was indeed the most powerful force in Yunjin Hill. It was also the actual governing body of Yunjin Hill. Yunjin Lord could be said to be one of the strongest cultivators in Yunjin Hill, and his cultivation was said to be at the heaven-trampling change of the heaven-breaking 3 transformations. The heaven-trampling change already had the ability to trample the heavens, and its strength would also undergo a metamorphosis. It would be far, far stronger than the spirit change of the heaven-breaking 2nd transformation. Although Zhuowen's current strength was still not a match for the heaven-trampling change, it wouldn't be so easy for a heaven-trampling change cultivator to kill him. In Zhuowen's opinion, there might not be a cultivator in the entire Yunjin Hill who could kill him, Zhuowen. This was also the reason why he could kill Zhou Xianwen and Yu Fu without hesitation. Yuanda smiled and nodded repeatedly. He didn't dare to refute Zhuowen. Zhuowen took out a formation plate and handed it to Yuanda, saying, "I thank your Yuan tribe for taking me in for more than half a year. This is a heaven-breaking grade 1 defensive formation. You can set it up in the core of the tribe. Even if a fetus god transformation cultivator comes, they might not be able to break it." Yuanda's hands trembled, and he almost lost his grip on the formation plate. A heaven-breaking grade formation was something he had only heard of in legend. The Yuan tribe had never even seen a formation before, but now, Zhuowen had set up a heaven-breaking grade formation right off the bat. How could Yuanda not be shocked? "Master Zhuo, this formation plate is too precious. We dare not accept it." Yuanda smiled bitterly. "Yuanda, I told you to accept it, so accept it. I, Zhuowen, will repay kindness with kindness and revenge with revenge. Your Yuan tribe took me in, which is a favor to me. This formation plate is what your tribe deserves," Zhuowen said solemnly. Yuanda was stunned, but he could only nod. Zhuowen's gaze fell on Yuanzhong. Yuanzhong felt Zhuowen's gaze, and his gaze was a little evasive. He said guiltily, "Master, Yuanzhong, your talent in medicine is very strong. You've also learned how to concoct medicine. You've already finished your apprenticeship." As he spoke, Zhuowen took out a book and handed it to Yuanzhong. "This is the pharmacology experience I've written in the past 6 months. Take it and study it well. It'll be very beneficial to your understanding of medicine." Zhuowen continued. Yuanzhong took the book and looked at Zhuowen. He opened his mouth and whispered, "Master, are you planning to leave?" Zhuowen nodded and said, "Yes, and Yuanzhong, do you still remember that valley? I suggest that your Yuan tribe move to that valley after I leave. Yu Fu and Zhou Xianwen died here. Yunjin Lord's mansion should send people to investigate. If you go to that valley, and with the formation I gave you, the people from Yunjin Lord's mansion won't be able to find your tribe." After Zhuowen finished speaking, he walked toward the dense forest outside the tribe. Soon, Zhuowen's figure disappeared into the forest. Yuanda and the others had complicated expressions. In the end, they all knelt on the ground and bowed to Zhuowen from afar. "Big brother, Lord Zhuo is right. It's very dangerous here. Let's move the tribe to that valley." Yuan Kong said to Yuanda, "All right. Then let's move the tribe," Yuanda said with a determined gaze. Night gradually fell. The entire ash cloud forest began to become gloomy and strange in the dark night. Zhuowen found a tree hole and set it up as a temporary cave residence. He took out the formation plate that Lu Miaozhen gave him. The formation plate emitted a faint light that wrapped around Zhuowen's body. Not long after, the entire ash cloud forest sank into darkness. It was invincible. Zhuowen sat cross-legged in the light source, but his gaze became extremely solemn. This was because he sensed that there were many strange things flying in the darkness outside the light source, and they were emitting a terrifying sound. Zhuowen knew that it was the work of evil spirits again. Chapter 3698. Zhuowen didn't pay any attention to the evil spirit in the darkness. Instead, he sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate. In reality, he had already reached the peak of the fifth heaven's decay. With his natural talent, it would only take a single thought for him to immediately crush the heavens. However, he was wary of the tribulation that would descend upon him after crushing the heavens. Based on his past experience, the tribulation that would descend upon him in the instant of crushing the heavens would definitely far surpass the first heaven transformation stage. If he wasn't confident, he wouldn't be in a hurry to break through. However, he was only cultivating now to prepare for his ascension after breaking through. This was because once he had enough accumulation, he wouldn't just be at the early stage of the divine fetus transformation stage. Instead, he would instantly reach the late stage of the divine fetus transformation stage, or even the peak stage. I hope I can find information about weakening the great heaven-crushing tribulation when I reach the cloud brocade territory. Zhuowen's eyes flashed as he silently sank into cultivation. After midnight, Zhuowen abruptly opened his eyes. This was because he felt a sudden weight on his back. It was as if there was something hanging on his back. A cold and sinister aura appeared on his neck. It was as if there was something blowing on his neck. At this moment, Zhuowen discovered that the light from the formation disk before him was much dimmer than before. The range of the light only reached Zhuowen's chest. As for his head, it was at the edge of the darkness. Kakik. A strange laughter sounded from behind Zhuowen. Zhuowen's expression darkened. He knew that the thing on his back was most likely the evil spirit that had taken advantage of his weakness. In the instant that Zhuowen slowly turned his head, he saw the face of a woman who had suffered a crushing defeat. Her hair was disheveled, and her crimson eyes were staring coldly at Zhuowen. She licked her lips and cackled. Zhuowen discovered that this woman's tongue was even longer than a snake's tongue. Bang! Zhuowen didn't hesitate to unleash a palm strike, which landed on the woman's face. The woman's head instantly exploded, but there wasn't any blood. Moreover, Zhuowen's right hand felt as if it had struck thin air. It was as light as a feather. But soon, Zhuowen saw the strange woman's face on the other side of the light source. In addition, Zhuowen sensed that there were a few other evil spirits in the tree hole. Outside the tree hole, there was an even greater number of evil spirits. Zhuowen raised the disc array in his hand, and the light source immediately enveloped his head. The evil spirits that were originally gathering towards his head all screamed and ran away in fright. However, Zhuowen soon discovered that his feet, which were not within the range of the light source, were tightly grabbed by a few pairs of pale hands. Damn it! What the hell are these evil spirits? Zhuowen's face turned ugly. He could feel that these evil spirits were not real creatures, but more like ghosts. However, Zhuowen discovered that this evil spirit was even more bizarre than a ghost. This was because his shattered godly power was enough to destroy any ghost or divine soul, but it had no effect on evil spirits. Zhuowen began to believe Lu Miaozhen's words. Even if it was a shattering heaven-tier elite, if he went out alone in the night, the danger was also extremely great. Zhuowen used his shattered godly power to disperse the arms grabbing his feet, but his expression was not too good. Shattered godly power did not have much effect on these evil spirits. Even if he used his shattered godly power to disperse the evil spirits, he could not injure them at all, let alone destroy them. Seeing the light source of the disc array gradually weaken, Zhuowen knew that if he did not think of a way, he really might not be able to survive this night. Time gradually passed, and the light source became weaker and weaker. The range that could be illuminated also shrunk again and again, and the evil spirits in the darkness scrambled to pounce on Zhuowen. Zhuowen continuously used his shattered godly power to disperse the entanglement of the evil spirits, and the shattered godly power in his body was consumed extremely quickly. Damn it! If this continues, I'll really die here. Cold sweat dripped down Zhuowen's forehead. The evil spirits were really too bizarre, making it impossible for him to guard against them. If he still could not think of a solution, it was really possible that he would be killed by these evil spirits. Moreover, in this deep mountain forest, he could not find any other light source that could improve the disc array, which made Zhuowen extremely bitter. However, Zhuowen did not give up because of this. He walked out of the cave in large strides, and jumped to the top of the tallest tree. Although the night of the 100 Regions' outer realm was terrifyingly dark, Zhuowen knew that as long as there was a light source nearby, then he would be able to see. Very quickly, Zhuowen discovered that there was a weak light source near a bush about a few kilometers away from him. Zhuowen revealed a joyful expression. He knew that he was saved. He rushed down from the top of the tree, and rushed in the direction of the light source. I hope the disc array can still hold on for a while. Zhuowen looked at the disc array in his hand. The range of the light source of this disc array was already only able to illuminate half of his body, and it was still continuously weakening. Zhuowen knew that the reason why the surrounding evil spirits did not completely attack him was mainly because they were afraid of the light source on his body. If even the light source disappeared, he would fall into endless darkness and become a living target for many evil spirits. That would be the most dangerous thing. Very quickly, Zhuowen approached the light source, which was only about 500 meters away. The light source in his hand was already so weak that it was only the size of a palm. Other than Zhuowen's hands, the rest of his body had fallen into darkness. In the terrifying darkness, Zhuowen could only see the light source in front of him and the light source in his hand, and his ears were noisy and sharp evil spirits. In order to resist the evil spirits, Zhuowen released his divine soul sword intent, which surrounded his body, and barely blocked the evil spirits' attacks. Zhuowen could feel that the strength of these evil spirits was very ordinary, but because they were in the darkness and did not have a physical body, they caused great trouble for Zhuowen. Zhuowen sighed softly. He knew very well that if his eyes and spiritual sense could see the darkness of the 100 territories of the outer realms, and if he could see these evil spirits, then even if there was no light source, he would be able to dodge their attacks and stay far away. Unfortunately, he did not have this ability at all. The moment the light source in Zhuowen's hand was completely extinguished, Zhuowen smoothly entered the range of the light source near the bushes. Only then did Zhuowen discover that the center of the light source was an irregular stone that was half the height of a person. The light source was emitted from this stone. Around the stone, there were 3 figures sitting cross-legged. However, the moment Zhuowen suddenly rushed in, the 3 people instantly opened their eyes, took out their weapons, and looked at Zhuowen with unfriendly eyes. Zhuowen noticed that the 3 people were 2 men and 1 woman. One of the younger men was very handsome, carrying a long sword on his back, and had an outstanding temperament. The other middle-aged man was burly, holding a long hammer in his hand, and his eyes were very fierce. As for the remaining young woman, her looks were ordinary, but Zhuowen could feel that the aura on her body was very unusual. The 3 of you, I am Zhuowen. Because the light source in my hand was about to go out, I happened to see a light source here, so I accidentally broke in. If I have offended you in any way, please forgive me. Chapter 3699. Truly laughable. This fellow Taoist, what does your light source extinguishing have to do with us? Be more sensible and hurry up and scram. The handsome youth with a sword on his back snickered, looking at Zhuowen with a mocking expression. The middle-aged man and that woman also fell silent when they heard the youth speak. Zhuowen could tell that this youth with a sword on his back should be the one in charge among these 3 people. The 3 of you, as long as you let me stay for a night, it'll do. Of course, I won't stay for free. I'll naturally give you all remuneration, Zhuowen said in a solemn voice. Oh? Remuneration? What remuneration? The youth with a sword on his back became interested and said coolly. Zhuowen took out a birth-rebirth good fortune pill and threw it to the youth. Half-step heaven-breaching level divine pill? Although the quality is average, it's still passable. Give me those 100 divine pills of yours and I'll let you stay for a night, the youth with a sword on his back said indifferently. But Zhuowen's expression became gloomy. The birth-rebirth good fortune pill was at any rate a half-step heaven-breaching level divine pill. Even a fetal divine transformation powerhouse might not be able to casually take out 100 of this level of earth god pills either. Furthermore, the birth-rebirth good fortune pill reserves on him did not have that many either. Of course, if you can't take out those 100 divine pills, hand your spirit ring to me and I can also barely let you stay for a night," the youth with a sword on his back said, reaching for a yard after taking an inch. Zhuowen's expression was calm as he said coolly, "What if I say no?" The youth with a sword on his back was stunned, looking at the Zhuowen in front of him in surprise. The instant Zhuowen appeared within the range of the light source, he saw through that Zhuowen's cultivation was merely fifth blight, while he was late-stage fetal divine transformation, and his two subordinates were initial-stage fetal divine transformation powerhouses. With their lineup, Zhuowen was an ant-like existence in his eyes. He should only be at their mercy. It was just that he did not expect that this ant was actually so unyielding. "Hoo-hoo, this is not up to you to say no. Now that you've stepped into my territory, your life is in my hands, and your things can only belong to me." The young man laughed. The young woman and the middle-aged man suddenly blocked Zhuowen's path of retreat. Powerful auras surged, firmly locking onto Zhuowen. "You want to kill me?" Zhuowen's gaze turned sharp. "Hee, you're not that stupid after all. I'll give you one more chance. Hand over the spirit ring and get the hell out of here. This is your only choice." The young man sneered. "Poochie! Poochie!" With a flash of sword light, the heads of the middle-aged man and the young woman exploded, scattering into a fine mist of blood as they fell to the ground. The smile on the young man's face completely froze. He looked at Zhuowen in disbelief, who was surrounded by the sword essence of the spirit. This fifth blight ant had actually instantly killed two of his fetal god transformation subordinate. How was this possible? "You hid your cultivation?" The young man's face was gloomy as he involuntarily retreated. Zhuowen walked step by step towards the young man and said in a calm voice, "Answer me, did you want to kill me just now?" "No. Fellow Taoist, I didn't mean that. How about this, I'll allow you to stay in the light source. Also, I'll return this spirit pill to you." The young man took a few steps back, his face full of fear, and threw the rebirth pill to Zhuowen. Zhuowen did not even look at the rebirth pill. He coldly looked at the young man, the killing intent in his eyes almost undisguised. The young man retreated to the edge of the light source and said, "Fellow Taoist, I'm from the Yunjin Lord's mansion. If you dare to kill me, you'll also be in great trouble." Zhuowen smiled and asked, "What a coincidence, before I met you, I also met two people from the Yunjin Lord's mansion. I remember they were called Zhou Xianwen and Yu Fu. What's your relationship with them?" The young man's eyes lit up and he said, "My name is Eugene, I'm Yu Fu's cousin. It seems that fellow Taoist knows my cousin, so we're on the same side." Zhuowen still walked towards Eugene and grinned. "Zhou Xianwen and Yu Fu were both killed by me." "What?" Eugene's pupils shrank and his mind was in chaos. He was so scared that he could not help but take another step back and step into the darkness. Instantly, countless evil spirits grabbed Eugene, and the screams in the surroundings became even more rapid and frequent. Zhuowen silently stood in the light source. With Eugene's strength, it was not difficult for him to get rid of those ordinary evil spirits. After Eugene re-entered the light source, Zhuowen made his move. But soon, a chill rose in Zhuowen's heart. He actually felt an extremely terrifying aura in the darkness. This aura actually made him tremble. Then, he heard Eugene's miserable scream. Along with this scream was the sound of flesh being torn apart. Not long after, Eugene's screams completely disappeared, but that terrifying aura did not dissipate for a long time. Moreover, Zhuowen could feel that the owner of this aura was staring at him with greed in its eyes. Although Zhuowen could not see what was in the darkness, his sharp intuition told him that the owner of this aura was extremely terrifying. It was not something that Zhuowen could resist. Zhuowen's eyes revealed a dignified expression. He knew that Eugene was dead, and the owner of this aura was definitely not an ordinary evil spirit. It was actually able to easily kill a late-stage divine transformation realm cultivator like Eugene. Pung! Suddenly, there was the sound of air being torn apart. Then, from the darkness, a claw reached out and grabbed at Zhuowen's chest. This hand claw was extremely fast and suddenly rushed into the range of the light source. How is this possible? Zhuowen's pupils shrank. The moment the claw reached him, he moved away from his fatal spot. The claw tore through his left shoulder, causing blood to spurt out. Ci. Zhuowen could clearly see that the claw was rapidly melting under the light source. The claw immediately retracted back into the darkness. Zhuowen quickly sat down on a rock. This was the core of the light source, and the light source was the strongest. Zhuowen didn't believe that the strange thing could reach its claws into the stone. Pung pung pung. In the darkness, there was the sound of footsteps like an earthquake. These footsteps circled around the light source, one step at a time, clearly restless. Finally, the footsteps gradually faded away. It was clear that the owner had given up on capturing Zhuowen. Zhuowen let out a light breath, but his expression became more and more dignified. He did not expect that such a terrifying evil spirit would exist in the ash cloud forest. Recalling the scene before his light source was extinguished and he was still wandering in the ash cloud forest, Zhuowen could not help but feel a chill in his heart. Fortunately, he did not encounter such a terrifying evil spirit at that time. Otherwise, he doubted whether he would be able to escape with his life. Zhuowen sat cross-legged on the rock.